to moving to Michigan. We work closely with you. I think Michelle and I are talking about it. We try to do a business summit every year, and I think it might be time to go back to MC3, which we did 2 years ago with our largest attendance, and I would recommend that we do that in the spring. On the back is just a sample of just some of the stuff that you might not see, because we're promoting it out to the whole region, but when Tide came, we promoted that out to our community, and we're working with a company right now. They're looking to hire a engineer. They hope to have 6 employees, but this is an example of a company that we hope to work with through the years to grow them. I like to say, Toyota, who's one of our largest employers, started out here with 6 employees 20 years ago. So we don't know where SciTime's going to go, but this is their first location outside of Silicon Valley. So it's sort of short and sweet. I'm really here to answer any questions. And again, we have a 30 slide deck presentation if you want us to give that to you sometime.
Questions?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just getting our annual meeting, which you'll all be invited to, will be in April. And then I know somebody from your city council participates in our business development committee, and we'll be sending out an invitation February 28th for having our next meeting. Go ahead, Seth.
So my question is, one of the elements of our draft master plan is to attract tech companies here. SciTime and similar, perhaps a bit more programming software bits. What challenges would you see for Dexter, and or what could we do to help that along?
I think you're seeing that, we've seen that in Slane. One thing you have to know is you probably already have a lot of tech companies already here, people working out of their home. And so it's sort of how can you pull them out of their home to get them to work in an office maybe above retail, like on the 2nd floor. Just, I think, making it easy to do that, and obviously internet speed is important, but I think we can help you do some of that promotion, but we are starting to see that more than, obviously we have our incubator in downtown Ann Arbor, but a lot of our smaller communities have people who, they don't want to work from their home, but they don't want to commute too far, so reaching out to that population on that level.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jennifer? Let you off easy tonight.
Okay.
Appreciate your help and stuff.
Thanks for coming.
Okay,
Thanks for
thank
coming.
you.
Thanks for
Did we replace Jim Carson with that person?
I was thinking that too much too, I'm not sure. We'll have to check. So we're down to item E, which is approval of the agenda. There are a few items in front of this meeting, I assume all of you. They're informational. Some cost estimates for the Mill Creek Park option. There's a draft comments on the purchase and sale agreement that's for review this item, for discussion item L5. There's another resolution for consideration for L2. Relative to the property purchase. I think that's it. Have we got all those? Okay. So I see the motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Smith, second by Michelle. Thank you both. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. We have an agenda. So we're down to item F, which is a public hearing this evening. And we are seeking, on December 10th, we advertised for a public hearing to take comment on an ordinance to prohibit marijuana establishments pursuant to the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act of 2018. This agenda has that posted as and the Michigan Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act of 2016, so it's a little different than what we actually noticed back in December, but I think we'll take comments on any of the topics And then there is a draft ordinance in the packet for potential consideration following the public hearing, should council want to do that. So I will open up the public hearing at
7:08.
Okay, officially open it at 7:08 for comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this topic? Please step forward. Thank you for coming this evening. Please step forward and introduce yourself. You could state your name and address. We would sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Tom Wilkinson. I live at 7788 Forest, about 2 blocks from here. And I have to say, I'm, unlike most issues in the public arena, I'm actually see both sides of this issue. On the one hand, Dexter is a small community. These are uncharted territories. We possibly don't want to be pioneers in something, since there are many unintended consequences from such actions. But on the other hand, I'm a former small business owner, and I have sort of a conservative pro-business attitude. And I think if government is going to step forward and prohibit some otherwise legal activity, it needs to demonstrate a compelling interest. And my definition of compelling interest is something that's based on evidence and hard data. And I'd like to understand what evidence has been brought forward to suggest that prohibiting this activity is appropriate at this point. I would say that to suggest a possible compromise is that we could go forward and enact this ordinance, but put a, say, 2-year sunset clause on it. See what experience other communities have, and then come and reevaluate. If we simply go ahead and pass it, in my experience, there's an inertia to such things, and we would never come back and re-examine it again, even though there may be new evidence. So I would suggest that we take a step back, a wait-and-see attitude, and re-examine it, force ourselves to re-examine it in 2 years, and see what the experience of other communities is, bring hard evidence to bear on the situation, and then decide how to go forward from there. As I said, as a former small business owner, I'm very hesitant to prohibit legal activities. I see empty storefronts in Dexter, and my guess is there are people who would welcome job creation. So I think we should proceed cautiously before we prohibit an activity. And if we do prohibit it, it should be based on evidence and not ideology or personal preferences. There are many vocal vegetarians who would like to close down steakhouses, but we allow those to operate. And so I think we should bring the same considered evidence-based approach to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Welcome.
Thanks.
Please state your name and address for us, if you would, please.
Cynthia Polford, 6967 Wellington Drive. We moved to Dexter because it was a village, a small town. And like that, feel also concerned about our youth. I have high schoolers. There is hard evidence regarding marijuana, particularly on the effects, the negative effects on the development of the young brain. So that's where I come from as a parent and as a concerned citizen of Dexter, that I think definitely makes sense to me. There is evidence to medically and physiologically see it's harmful. It's not apples to oranges, comparing it to a preference of vegetarian or meat eater. It's not the same thing. Affects the negative effects on the youth, particularly. So definitely in favor of the prohibiting those businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other folks that have come to speak, maybe? Please.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you.
Lou, sorry. My name is Ryan Kinnear, 3577 Shaw Court. Let's see. There's a couple different reasons I think that a lot of people are afraid of these establishments. And the aforementioned comments about their effects on youth and young people using marijuana are reasons why people want to avoid having these establishments in an area. However, having, excuse me, having licensed legal establishments that provide those substances and services, generally, they're required by law to check ID. They make sure that it doesn't end up in people who shouldn't have it. But also for me, it's a little personal. My father has used medical marijuana to help wean himself off of opioids. And we all know that there's an opioid crisis across much of the state of Michigan. For many members of our community who deal with chronic health issues and other things, who have access to legal medical marijuana in the state of Michigan, we're kind of asking them to avoid being able to utilize the business that could aid their health here in our community. I think that it's worthwhile to think about how the particular businesses need to be licensed and operated inside of Dexter. I think it's perfectly fair to ask for some time to craft ordinances that are appropriate for our community and to try to make us some influence on deciding what exactly types of businesses that are covered by the 2018 Act and the 2016 Act we wish to promote. But I think having a blanket ban really doesn't do much for many of the people who voted for particular access to this, and B, keeping it something that's illegal and illicit makes it just more attractive to young people, and I don't think it necessarily has the intended consequence. I recognize that there are like many concerns about youth, but there are also, I believe, distance requirements from certain schools and things like that built into existing legislation. If not, that's something we could ordinance. But the existence of businesses that could provide these services, which are used for healthcare for a number of Michiganders, I think would be something that would be a little premature. I would hope that we would not take any permanent steps as a city to cut that off before it's had a chance to grow and develop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comments? No other public wants to speak at the public hearing on this? Okay. Fair enough. We will close the public hearing at 7:16.
Yep, 7:16.
Thank you, everybody, for speaking this evening, those that spoke, and the rest of you for listening. Staff has, as requested by council, staff has drafted a resolution. It's in the packet. An ordinance. Is there a motion at all, or an action at this time, or do you want to hear from Michelle first? We can do that if you'd like.
What's your house?
Well, I don't know, without knowing what she's going to say, I don't know. Short of that, I'm going to move on to item C.
She's just going to read the act, I don't want her to do that, okay?
Oh, no, I won't.
I read that.
I'll make the motion to approve the ordinance in our packet, page 6.
Okay, moved by Smith,
I will second that.
second by Michelle's. Okay. If you would, please let us know what you've prepared.
Okay, so what you have is just a basic summary of the medical, or the marijuana, Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. That's Proposal 1 that was passed this past March, and that's for the recreational marijuana. The other act that this ordinance, or this proposed ordinance would affect would be the Medical Marijuana Facilities and Licensing Act. This ordinance does not impact the Medical Marijuana Act of 2008, if I remember year. That's the one where you have the caregiver and the patient. This does not affect that. That is still in place. That is not affected. This one literally does what it states. It would prohibit the commercialization of the marijuana as a recreation or as medical marijuana, but for those businesses dealing with more than 72 plants. We don't know, we do know the rules for the facilities, the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act. That's already, those rules have been promulgated by the state. As a community, we do not allow it. It's not in our ordinance. It wasn't when the act was passed, after the rules were done, and we didn't have to do anything with it. Because with that act, you had to opt in. That was the requirement. We didn't opt in. So what we're doing today just sort of makes it very clear. For the recreational one, though, those rules have a year to be promulgated. Like I say in the memo, there are a lot of questions. We don't know what the answers are going to be yet. We won't know until Laura gets done. But with the recreational one, communities must opt out, or they would be allowed. So that's what you're doing with this. You're just cleaning up one, and you're making it very clear on the other. Do you have any questions for me?
Start down with Zach, please.
Just a point of clarification for the rest of the council members in the audience. If we adopt this and it becomes effective, part of the act that was approved at the polls allows for the citizens to have a petition to
yes.
get it kicked out.
Right.
Correct? So this isn't
Correct.
carved in stone necessarily if there's a large...
Absolutely. If the act does have, does set forth provisions that if a community does opt out, residents can go through a process where it, in effect, would override that. But there is a specific process that would have to be followed.
But basically, some of the comments here that you provided are, since the state hasn't done all of their work, i.e. put out the rules,
Right.
created the application, one thought is sort of a wait and see what that looks like, and then potentially take it up again to the first speaker's comment. We could revisit this again.
Correct. You could,
I mean, we always have that,
choose
we always
not
have that
to do
option
this
to
tonight.
revisit an ordinance.
At any
right?
point in time.
At any point in time, so.
Right. You could choose not to do this tonight and come back after Laura promulgates the rules, or take this up tonight with the intention of revisiting it after Laura promulgates the rules. It's completely up to you. I think part of the reason that other communities have done this is, excuse me, and it's one of the reasons staff has brought this in front of you, is the acts, the proposal that was passed identified that it went into effect, if it was voted on, it would go into effect December 6th, I believe it was.
Correct.
And even though the rules haven't been promulgated in Laura, that's the department of the state, that has a year to put it all together, communities are concerned that if they didn't act before that or within a reasonable time after, then they wouldn't have that ability. So we're trying to mitigate unknown risks.
Understood. Any council comments or questions from Michelle?
We have a precedent for ordinances that have a what the first speaker referred to as a sunset date. Sort of, you have an effective date, whatever we have any track record on ordinances. And to force revisiting an issue at that particular point in time, I'm not aware of it.
Not that I'm aware of either. I think it would have to be, our intent. I don't know that you would make it part of the ordinance. I think you would probably, if you really wanted to look at it again in 2 years, you would look at it again in 2 years. You can come back to it and find out what you learned and do it.
Once we do the 8.10.
Yeah, it could be a year from now, it could be 6 months from now, it doesn't have to be 2 years. I'm using 2 years because that's how it was proposed in the first speaker, but you could look at it anytime you felt you understood the rules better.
Right.
It's an ordinance, not a change to your charter. And I think that's where it provides you that flexibility.
Just to change it, we'd have to go through a similar process of public noticing it, seeking public input and feedback.
I was just thinking of it from the perspective of giving constituents some assurance that it will be revisited. If that's the mindset, if that's council's concurrence on the matter, if that's the direction it goes. It might be helpful to the public to have some assurance, or at least a stated commitment that will be revisited after the state promulgates rules.
It could go into, as a different document, like goals and objectives, or maybe a less official document, if that's the intention.
I kind of think it's an important consideration, given the voting numbers on this.
Right.
The majority of people, to my understanding, the majority of people in Dexter favored this law. So, and we're not, this ordinance, if it goes forward, wouldn't do anything to, wouldn't take away anybody's rights under state law. It would simply perhaps limit convenience of access.
Right. At this point, we're going to eliminate that commercial aspect.
Exactly. So, but I think that, indications that the data we have, which are the voting numbers, are that most people favor the legislation. But as a municipality, in the absence of state regulations, I think it's prudent to be cautious.
Well, and you have to remember, I think the legislation is drafted, which gives us the right to wait if we want to. In this case, it gives us the right to be cautious in this form.
Yeah, we're authorized.
With this, we're authorized to do this if we want to take that extra layer, if you will, or we could sit back and just, wait too. Call for okay, Donna?
I believe that one of the townships took action to prohibit at this point, and at the same time, is in the process of trying to decide how they can seek input from their constituents, because they too had high numbers of passage, but they didn't want to go forward until Laura had put their stuff together. So we're not the only ones that are thinking that way.
I think there have been several dozen municipalities in the state that have done that.
All set?
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
Paul?
Well, I think that one of the things that we look at is hard numbers, and in fact, the hard numbers in Colorado, 76% of the units of government in Colorado opted out, just like we can here. And believe it or not, in California, 92% opted out. Even though they had massive numbers of approving it also in their referendum. And I think there's a disconnect between what people want to do and what they want in their community. And the effects that they feel it has, and the effects that they feel it, the image that it has for their community. So I will be voting in favor of this for a variety of reasons. And I don't think I'm going to be an odd one to have my community voted not to be included in my community.
Mr. Michelle?
First, for the folks who spoke at the public hearing, thanks for coming out and leaving your couch and coming here and speaking with us. It's always good to hear input. I will start by saying that I did vote in favor of both 2008 and the one last year. one thing that Mr. Cousins brought up is the wording was, should it be legal in the state, not in your community? So it is tough, even though it passed by a wide majority in here. It's sometimes difficult to read into that. My concern is, this is very uncharted waters. If we allow it and the business is established, the way zoning works is it gets to be there forever, even if we say you can't do it. And I would prefer for us to have an idea of the structure and how we can manage it before we get boots on the ground with it. I mentioned previously that it is comforting that if there is a groundswell and people really want this, that there is a safety valve where they can make it happen. And I do think it's something that we ought to bring back up in 2 years or maybe even 3 years once there's been more data. Because even though other states have done it, the regulatory framework is going to be different in every state, so it's hard to do apples to apples. We are, if I'm here when that time, I'll certainly bring it up. But for those of you in the audience, it's also up to you to say, hey, these 2 years, why aren't you talking about it yet? So if we haven't done anything, you got to come here again. And so that's all I've got to say on that.
Good comments? Anybody else have something to say?
I guess I wouldn't have any problem waiting to adopt this once we get more information. I like Scott's point about, it was very clear the vote in the Dexter community as well as other communities that they wanted this. So perhaps we should sit on it for a while.
Anyone else have any discussion, council? Jim?
My preference is to put the ordinance in now and then reevaluate after we see what the licensing is.
Last chance for comments. Okay, so we have a motion by Smith, second by Michelle to adopt the ordinance that's in our packet. Please call the vote.
Knight,
Now,
Fisher,
This ordinance is the wait and see.
No. This ordinance.
right,
This-
you're gonna-
The motion is to adopt this off.
Opt out. Yes, okay. Yes, okay. I vote yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Okay, so motion carries 6-1. At this point, again, I'll reiterate Councilmember Michelle's comments. Thank you for coming. Those that spoke, thank you very much for the input. I think hopefully you heard a discussion here that shows a summary of cautiousness, but intent to revisit this at some point in time after the state clarifies some of the rules and regulations surrounding this. Thanks again. Please feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting and make it better. We are down to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on a non-arranged? Welcome.
Hey, we're talking, it's good, Cole Miller, 76544.
Thank you, sir.
I think it's good to have the numbers. I think Mr. Bell's point is well taken. The numbers, 61% in precinct 1, 63% in precinct 2, 62%. It was not even close. I don't think putting the onus on the people to then come back and bug you in 2 years to do the thing that we already voted overwhelmingly to do makes any sense. I think it was really clear. I think the point is taken that there could be a difference in perception of what you want done state versus local. I think this is something to see if the numbers are correct from Colorado and California. It makes sense that the people in charge are just less willing to accept the changes that the polls and that the votes tell us that the rest of the country has taken. And there's communities in Colorado that are losing business because Grand Junction, people have to drive 30 minutes out of town, 40 minutes out of town to the closest place, and all that business is lost. Now, that's not going to be our situation here. We've got Ann Arbor. I'm just saying, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to take action now. Laura hasn't even come up with the regulations yet, and I really think what Julie said was on point. There was no reason to do this now. That's all I want to say. It was, the vote was overwhelming. And we have plenty of places with liquor license. We don't see it as a thing that we need to. I mean, I understand the caution. I just think caution in acting too quickly would have been smart as well.
Thank you, Cole. Other members of the audience that are not arranged?
I point out to the young fellow that's back there in the back, that here is for an Eagle Scout thing. Would you stand up, please, and introduce yourself? Kind of like to recognize the Scouts for the reason here.
Perfect. Welcome.
What's your name?
Ransom Duncan, 7631 Uncle Martin Way. Hi, yeah, so I'm here, as Paul pointed out, to complete the citizenship in the community merit badge. So one of the requirements is to come to a city council, school board, or other community meeting. So I guess I'd just like to thank you all for welcoming me. Yeah.
You're welcome. You are now officially in the minutes, so you can see that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck to you. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. Are there any other members of the community that speak under non-arranged? Please, welcome.
Hi, Ron Jeffries. I just walked in and it's been a while since I've been to one of these meetings, so do I need to say where I live, my address?
Yes, please.
7955 Third Street. I apologize for being late, so I'm not sure exactly what you're discussing. Are you discussing the resolution that was put into the email that went out, the marijuana
Yes.
resolution?
Yes.
Yes, we actually just had a public hearing on it.
Okay.
Okay, it took 3 public comments and then.
So I missed that.
You're just a little past it, but we're just one item past it. You can.
We still care what you think.
Yes, we'd still like to hear.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, it's just, I worked a little late and I had to get dinner going for Lori, but anyway, I own Northern United Brewing Company, as you guys mostly probably should know, and we've been in Dexter since 2004, and Lori and I have lived on and off in Dexter since that time. Our son did K through 5 here, and so we've been long time contributors to the community. And so I just think that, well, I know I'd like to voice my opposition to the proposal of banning any businesses relating to marijuana for a couple of different reasons. One is, how many licenses are there in Dexter that sell alcohol? Mine being one of them, of course. A lot. I can't even count how many places sell beer, wine, and spirits, or all 3. I just saw a study that came out last week about the top 7 addictive drugs. Alcohol was number 5. Marijuana was not on that list. I also think that as the city council, at least whenever I've needed to start a new restaurant or a new something that needs liquor license approval, I come before the council, or one of my partners comes before the council, and we explain what we're doing and why we want to do it. And the council looks at that individually and approves it or doesn't approve it based on what they feel is best for the community. So I feel that anybody, and of course all this legislation is just being written and not really firmed up, but most likely anybody who's going to sell a controlled substance, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, gasoline, or marijuana now, is going to need to come before the council and talk to you and say why they feel that this is necessary for the community and why they should be allowed to have this license. And I think that just outright saying we're not going to allow that isn't taking into account a lot of the nuances. When you look at marijuana in general, it's a lot different than it used to be. There are a lot of medical effects and uses. And sure, there's a medical marijuana card, but why prohibit somebody from opening up a shop in Dexter that works with patients, that works with people that have chronic pain or other ailments that would benefit from this? Why would I have to, if I have cancer, why would I have to drive to Ann Arbor or Chelsea or Saline or whoever to get treatment for my illness? I think that's silly. I have a lot of business colleagues who have chronic back pain. I have chronic back pain too. We all grew up as young brewers. We moved a lot of heavy stuff, okay? We all have collapsed discs and cartilage issues, and they use marijuana for pain relief as opposed to being addicted to opioids, which I think is a great thing. I just don't think we should deny our community that, and especially when I really think that they will need to come before this council for final approval. So it's some sleazy drug dealer looking guy who, I apologize if I looked like that, because I'm only black hoodie and scrub, but you know, it's got my uniform as a brewer. Or it's somebody with 30 years experience in the medical field in U of M, and they want to open a clinic to help patients. I think we need to keep those options open. I also think, just as a sort of a separate aside, is that the people of Michigan approved of this overwhelmingly, and it's a big issue when the people decide something and then the council, the government, whatever you want to call it, decides, you know, we don't agree with what the people think. That's kind of a bigger issue for me, is that the people decided this. My son, when I said I was going to try to get to the council and speak to you guys, was like, you know, they're going to think we want to open a marijuana shop at the brewery. And I said, maybe they will. We don't. I don't smoke dope. Well, not since college. I'm sure a lot of people did in college. For me, that was a long time ago. So I'm not saying this for personal reasons. I'm just saying as a philosophical argument is when the people of Michigan say, this is what we want, for us to say we don't want this in our community is it's a slippery slope at that point. But also, there's tax revenue. Luper, the governor of Colorado, has said that you're not going to make $1 million. Well, you do make $1 million bucks, but it's a drop in the bucket of his state's budget, the taxes they get. But why would you deny a legitimate business that will pay taxes to be in our community as well? So I think there's a lot of really compelling reasons to not pass this resolution. And again, I apologize for being late, and I thank the council for letting me speak.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come out.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else under non-arranged participation that would like to speak on any topic? Okay, seeing none, we'll move down the agenda. There were 3 communications in the packet: the upcoming meeting list, our signed calendar, and a letter from Carlisle Wortman about their seasonal donations. Any questions or comments by council members on the communications that are in the packet? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports. Our first report tonight is from our Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Dan.
Good evening, Council.
And
Provided a 3-week report. Also, along with my report, we have a project update of date for the wastewater treatment plant. I'd like to start with questions on my report first.
Dan, can you talk a little bit about the water testing at Wiley? And what we did there? There's a little bit in your report about it.
They had a water service line break. They have a 4-inch line that goes in the back of Wiley that's actually connected to Grand Street. So that's their service line that goes in the back. They had a break in the line right outside the building, underneath some steps. So they let us know about that. We went and shut the water off to it because if the water leak was significant enough, it was actually flooding the boiler room. I talked to the building superintendent after they got it fixed and talked to him about possibly the city doing the bag sampling for the schools. But I wanted the school to be shut down for 3 days so we could provide that service. The schools did not want to close the school down for 3 days for us to do the bag T sample, so they hired an outside lab from Cleveland to do the sampling. They came in and did the samples. It took an awful long time for them to get the information back. Obviously, from my report, when they reported to me on December 28th that they found a pathogen in the school and wanted to open the school back up because their bag T samples came back fine, and they said it was in our supply line, our supply, that had the pathogen. At first, I had no idea, to be honest with you, what the pathogen was. I've contacted our water people, our chemists, and then I had to go to F&V, Blair Seal over, figure out where the pathogen had came from. Prior to that, I mean, every month we got to do bag T samples, and we do it with the help from the state on designated spots around the city of Dexter. We do that once a month. Prior to them getting these samples back saying there was a pathogen in the water, we had just done them 5 days prior. So I was I didn't suspect that that pathogen was in the water. So what I did, I had left work at 2:30 early that day. I called our water foreman and told him he needed to go up and get a hold of Brian, the superintendent of grounds. And then we talked to F&B, and we didn't suspect that we had that pathogen. But we went ahead and tested for it anyway, and went upstream and downstream and did the pathogen that they thought that we normally don't do. We just do vaccine and coliform testing. That was the 28th. We got that done over the holiday weekend. I think it was all said and done in about 5 days, and everything was clear. And then what I did, though, is I told Tim to tell the superintendent not to open the drinking fountains, because that pathogen, if they found it on our side, that's what we supply the school with. So for the testing company to say that the pathogen was in our water, but it wasn't in the school, logically doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay, I just wanted, I thought it's the longest bullet write-up I've ever seen in your report.
That's because I wrote it.
Oh.
Actually, I was on vacation last week.
I wanted to make sure.
But
Kind of explain that. Tim
I mean,
started it.
it's a big deal. I mean, it's a really big deal.
I think the one thing that this talks about your efforts to contact the lab.
Right.
I would suggest that you don't stop calling the lab
Okay.
to find out why they listed the potential for it on a.
Well, there's a lot of other things too. There's a chain of custody. There's who took the samples, what time the samples were taken.
Right.
When the samples were actually tested, because you can't keep these samples around for 2 weeks, and
But,
you know.
But
so-
usually you ask for them to do certain tests. It would be quite odd that they would pull this one out and have it show up as potential,
Right.
unless you were looking for something.
Well,
Don't you agree?
I agree. I don't think,
Anyway.
in all fairness to the superintendent, this was a little bit out of his realm. What I was asking for, and I thought I was looking out for the best interest of the city and also the residents, is to not have a child, a third or fourth grader, drink out of a wash sink or something if someone was actually there. I'm not really sure, and we can't get the chain of custody, so we'll keep working forward, and hopefully I can bring something back to you.
Please do.
Okay.
Paul?
And on page 27 of the report, I know you just do this because you're told to, but I see you took down a flagpole at Horseshoe Park.
Okay.
At any point in time, did you ever see anything other than an American flag on that pole and a Vietnam flag on that pole?
To be honest with you, I don't ever remember seeing anything on that flagpole. To be perfectly honest with you.
Okay. All right. And can you answer me where the flagpole is now? Because it was donated to the Horseshoe
I'm not sure, but I can follow up with Courtney on that and get back to you.
Oh, the flagpole's intended to go back up. So it's intended to be reinstalled.
Oh, it is, okay. Thank you very much. Didn't know that. Just wondered why it went down.
We're trying to work on some of the stuff from the council approved a long time ago. It just got pushed back, and since the weather's been nice, they're tackling other projects.
And I assume that taking down a flagpole and installing a whale were not one for one, it was something else in that process? So the whale is not a whale, it's just a...
It's a spring rider.
It's a spring rider. Yes.
I knew what it was, I just want to make sure that we're taking down flagpoles and putting in whales instead of...
No.
Thank you.
I left that one that way on purpose.
I figured you did.
Other questions for Dan on his written report?
Or FMV.
Well, I have FNV too. I have a report and update, and also I have a Mark for from FNV if there's any questions. The project's doing well. We're doing some water testing on the inside of the tertiary filters, concrete and pour. We're just about done on the outside, and we're hoping next week to do a water test at the Edwards building portion of that.
The pictures are helpful.
Yeah, it was good.
Appreciated those.
Especially page 36, that's a lot of stuff that we
Pardon me?
got rid of. The pictures on page 36,
Yeah.
the removal of all those pipes.
Yeah. Actually, we were commenting about that at the end of the day. Mark came into my office, and there is a huge difference in that room. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of work as far as jackhammer and stuff going on. I was talking to Mark today, and somebody had a little jackhammer drill today underneath the floor right where my office is, and it's been so quiet in that office, I jumped. But nothing compared to what the amount of concrete stuff that they had to remove with the big jackhammer going on. But yes, it's progressing nicely, and we've been getting very lucky with the weather. That weather has been really helping us out a lot. Any other questions?
Just one other follow-up comment for me.
Yep.
In your report, you mentioned that you picked up trash along the trail.
Yep.
On the path from the DPW east towards Dexter ground,
Yep.
there are a couple of, what look to be PVC pipes that might be
Okay.
ours or not, on the south bank, just past the DPW.
Okay.
Would you mind having somebody go and
I will.
pull those out of there if they can find them? One's, I think, blue and the other's white.
Okay. Yep. We can do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any further things with Dan? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next report is from our Community Development Manager, Michelle. How are you?
I'm fine. How's council this evening?
Good.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, before I go into updates in my report, as well as verbal updates that are not in the report, does anybody have any questions for me?
Mr. Smith looks like his hand's up.
In the packet, and it's under H, the legislative updates. And at the very end of part 2, you provide some links.
Yes.
Okay? And I couldn't find the links to work.
Okay, so would you like some hard copies?
Sometime, yeah, just email us the link, but maybe in the future, because we're using these devices now, maybe put the URL in parentheses or something there, so if we need to just copy it, we can.
Okay. No problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So, one of the things that...
I'm
I'm sorry. It's your hand, Paul.
On page 40, about the 8180 Main Street, the Mill Creek Sporting Goods, the last bullet of it, and I'm assuming that this says that these were just comments by planning commission members, is that correct?
Correct.
The last one says, should alternative uses of the site be considered?
Yes. So,
Did any-
because we are going through the master plan update, that was one of the things that had come up. I think a couple of comments that have been raised, not just at the planning commission meeting, but in regards to different uses. I think there was a comment about, should it be more of a passive, more passive uses like park or dog park or something like that. The concern is that the variety of uses that are permitted either by right or by special land use approval in the VC district may be too intense for that site. And you'll recall that when we established a zoning district, it was part of an annexation. So we haven't ever had the opportunity to master plan the site. And since we're going through the update, it does make sense, even if there weren't concerns or comments about the intensity, to look at it and make sure that it's what you want.
Thank you.
So you just took the thunder out of my chef, because that was one of my first. Okay, 2865 Baker Road, the enforcement that never dies. We were supposed to get a full application packet today for the demo. We've gotten bits and pieces of it. So I am working with city attorney and the property owner's attorney to come up with some way to get this thing off the mark. The thing that could hold up the application from coming in tomorrow is that they need to provide a soil erosion permit. And so what I talked about with Courtney and then followed up with the attorney is get the application in, make the fee. We've got the wrecking clearances. I'll work with the building department regarding the soil erosion at this point. But let's get this thing moving. And so hopefully that will happen. Excuse me. Ann Arbor, I'm going to piggyback off, Jennifer's already gone, but Ann Arbor Spark, I last week received a virtual introduction from Phil Saunter, who's with Spark, and I think you remember him, to a CEO of Michigan Aerospace and the founder of Spring Matter. Now that's not in Dexter, but he has ties, or he works in coordination with businesses in Dexter. His name's Peter, T-C-H-O-R-Y-K. I don't know how to pronounce that, and I don't want to murder the name. I followed up with him, and we actually have a meeting tomorrow morning so that I can learn more about his two businesses, what the interest here is in Dexter, and how we can work together from a business development standpoint. So I'll have more in my next report for you. Now the verbal updates. 8080 Grand has signed a new tenant for that last space. Never guess what it's going to be.
Well, first of all, before you say that, you always say that because you know the numbers. Where is 8088 Grand, okay?
8080 Grand is on Grand Street. It's the building that Don Darnell rehabbed.
Thank you. Now we all know.
Pardon me?
Now we all know.
Yes. So Mr. Darnell is taking the first space, and I think you'll recall that Whitetail Farms is expanding their operation to the second unit, and the third unit, which is somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet, is going to be a microbrewery. So they've been given all of the surveys for the industrial pretreatment, the PFAS. They're working on that. They're going to get that to us. Then I'm going to set up a meeting with DPW, myself, and the potential applicant, and sit down and make sure that the current sanitary sewer system can handle what they're going to be discharging. And if not, then we'll figure out what that's going to be. There will be some increase in the rental tap fee. I won't know that until I know how their space lays out. You know, the amount of manufacturing versus retail versus tasting room, et cetera. I don't expect it to be a lot because we are only talking about a very small space.
Is that space closest to the alley then?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. So remember the questions about those things that look like garage doors and our concerns about having some auto-related? If this is going to come out to actually be a tasting room, that could be really cool. It could be a nice place to, you know, to sit. And for those of you who like beer, enjoy one. I have no alcohol tolerance, so. The last little thing is the redevelopment ready communities update. Our draft baseline report was issued last year. There were a lot of questions and concerns we had on it. It took a while for Sean and I to sit down or have a meeting, even though it's a phone one, with MEDC. That finally happened end of July-ish. They sent their report in September, and I'm finally getting a chance to look it over. The changes that they made do appear to address the questions we had and the concerns. The one concern that hasn't been addressed, and they're not going to in this report, is their direction to streamline the site plan review process. That doesn't mean that when we look at it and we want to finally get certified, however many years that takes, that there aren't options for us to present to them to be able to do it the way we see best, not necessarily the way they want us to. So it's, I'm comfortable. I'm just going to get some comments from Sean, and then we should be able to start moving forward with this, especially with the 3045 Broad Street project coming up closely. I want to get this tied up. And that's it. That's all I've got. I know you'd like me to go on, but that's it.
Well, I have one other question. On the Rainbow Child Care site, I see they're getting closer. They were washing off stuff.
Yes.
Will there be an issue with only their first course of asphalt in, and not the permanent one before they can open, or will they be allowed to open up with just that first course of asphalt, since asphalt's not being laid now?
So they technically may be able to open up without that first course of asphalt done.
The first course is finished.
I'm sorry, the final wearing course. An applicant can get final zoning compliance, excuse me, even if something like that isn't done. In their case, though, they don't have landscaping done. I don't believe the fence is up yet, although I could be wrong. There's a number of components that they will be bonding for, and the wearing course won't be part of that bond because it's actually part of their site plan completion bond. So it will get done, but yes, they could get open.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do they have a tentative date?
She probably knows more about it. I heard it was,
I am doing an inspection of the site for what they've got done on Wednesday.
Okay.
I've sent them their performance bond worksheet, and so far I have calculated at just under $100,000. So we'll see what, it had everything. There may be things that they actually have done that I just wasn't aware of. So.
I think we were interested in having it done by the change in the term of school, and Bates is moving that direction. Okay.
They technically could be done within 2 to 3 weeks.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Was your hand up? Or just
No.
Okay. I'm the same person.
I was just hanging out there.
Yeah, no, I do it too.
And I would like, when we get a discussion of, where's my junk here, because we don't have discussion, I thought maybe there was a discussion there, I know it's been talked about the rapid flashing beacons with the schools in relation to that. Is there an issue of that daycare center also not being allowed, or I don't know if they match the age limit, of having kids having to walk to school as well, from that site as well as the one from Morningstar. Do we know that?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna be busing anybody from Morningstar or Rainbow. They would have to make alternate arrangements like Morningstar has to.
Okay.
I'll touch a little bit more on under my report if you
Right.
hold the question.
Oh, somebody can, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, I think we're on to page 3 of the agenda, down there, city manager report.
Next week, or sorry, 2 weeks, the new RUS department will come to the meeting, and now comes to us from the Superior Township, et cetera, collaboration. So, maybe Kim and Lieutenant Hampton, who's our acting lieutenant, will be here on the 28th. Just a couple things from my report that need some feedback. First being the Steel Fisher photography business. The chamber did say that they would be interested in helping us solicit the businesses, and we can solicit our part of our CTAP funding potentially to cover it, but we won't know if we're going to get the CTAP funding for it until after he needs to decide on whether we're going to move forward. So at some point, council, I mean, it looked like he had a date of February something, Justin?
Early February.
To know, so I don't know if that should be an item or how council wants to move forward with that, but we will need to get him a decision by February 1st, it looks like.
Who from the chamber is initiating the contact with the businesses?
It would be Betsy, right?
Yeah, I spoke with Betsy and Jim Wolfens and indicated that they would help us seek out the businesses.
Do you think, is there a way we could ask them if they'll have some initial contacts made by our next meeting? So we can get an idea of whether they have any lined up or not?
Yeah, we can definitely reach out and ask.
I think it might be, I don't know how hard it is to start that.
I would like to let you know that I indicated to both Betsy and to President, I've lost his name right now.
Jim Litton.
Yeah, that I was the new contact and representative from the council. They indicated to me that they would send me agendas and everything and all the information. I haven't heard absolutely nothing from them, and I know they had a meeting on the 8th, I saw it in the, I haven't received nothing, so I think maybe if you would send them a letter, official letter talking about who that contact is, maybe I can help with some of that information and any of that contact from us to them, back and forth, like we've always done, right, with that group.
So, Bert, your report says that this person wants confirmation from us by February 1st, as well as 5 businesses. So, what sort of formal action is required from council?
Well, it's more just knowing, I mean, because there is a financial participation by council at $6,500.
Right.
So, I mean, that's probably the biggest deal is the commitment for that, which, council would have to take action on. If people want to move forward with it.
So that has to be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right, I guess, if council wants to move forward with it generally.
Yeah, to me, the hard part though is the 5 businesses at $6,500 each. If that's the requirement, those two numbers. I mean, it's a lot. Could be a lot. I don't know if it's a lot. There's not a lot for some.
But it's not a lot for every other community except Dexter. They all participate in it, from what I understand. Since my indication.
We'll see. My advice would be to with Betsy, see if they're, or James, and see if they're, have approached anybody to see how many businesses are even interested in doing it. Of the ones that they have on the top of their head. Because I think the consensus, again, we didn't vote on anything, but I think the consensus was that if we found businesses, we'd probably be willing to support it. Right? Is that a fair statement? I'm seeing nods, that's kind of how we did this without officially voting.
But I guess.
But it's contingent, I mean, our 6,500 is leveraged by another, 32,500 from the community. So if we haven't found that yet,
And we should probably have a report back on that on the 28th.
that's what I'm saying, it has to be next meeting if we're doing it on the first.
Parks and Recreation Commission ended up recommending, they had seen a proposal from Plant-Wise, kind of building on the success we had with the prescribed burn and the rain gardens, to do one kind of throughout the park in some of the areas where we have invasive species issues. So I guess if council's interested in that, that could be an agenda item as well. It's a pretty significant amount of acreage, but like I said, as you can see from the rain gardens, they grew back really quickly, and the rain gardens are in much better condition than they've ever been in. So that's something that will come back, because that's only done at certain times of year. Obviously, we can't do that, the dead of summer.
Which number is that on there?
That's G.
Page 91.
G, oh, there's G. Thank you.
And then I guess the only other thing was just a kind of a clarification on the Main Street signal. So we did get the clarification on Jim Smith's concern about that sign and the fact that it was fiber optic, and that was when it was failing, and they changed it to LED. But we don't really need the expense of that sign, because the way that those doghouse style signals will be, that will only be a red arrow when people aren't allowed to turn right, which would be if there's a pedestrian that has signaled to walk across the street, or when the left turn from Baker to, or from Main to from Main to Baker is green. Other than that, it will be either a yellow arrow or a green arrow. So we can have a no turn on red sign, and it won't be holding people up that would normally have been able to go. So I think with that clarification, we're pretty much ready to move forward now with ordering the new lights, which were approved, I don't know, months ago now. So, I think that's about it. Raina will be at the next meeting. I provided the hard copies of the audit for you today, so you have them in preparation for that. I think that's it, Justin, unless there was anything else we needed. I have the articles of incorporation for that Regional Resource Management Authority, which I was going to make a discussion item until we ended up with too many discussion items, so you can talk about that at the next meeting. If anybody has any questions, you can let me know about that. Or you'll let me know between now and the next packet.
Did you want to talk about the committee meeting on Monday, April?
Paul, what was your question?
On the dog park,
Oh, yeah.
the statement that was made, I guess I'm concerned about that. The commission expressed concerns related to the project not being on any planning documents. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, it's not in the Parks and Rec master plan.
Yeah.
Is the biggest thing. It's not something that rose to the top of being included as a potential project in the Parks and Rec master plan, when they just did it in 2016.
Okay, so they did see it in 2016, but it did rise to the top of the issue at that point in time?
So when the commission went out to do the surveying, public surveying for items to be included in the 2016 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there were not sufficient comments or requests for a dog park to be included in the action plan section of the master plan.
Okay, so it was the master plan that they used for the concerns that they had, or that was a concern, that wasn't the master plan.
And that written proposal's in the package for the meeting tomorrow, right?
It is.
So it's a very lengthy document, like 20 pages. It's a very lengthy document that Mr. R. sees the side time
Yeah, it's like her.
over here
Right.
provided.
Well, is that the same guy?
Yeah.
Spelled the same way, anyway.
Yep. And then the only other thing was just confirming if council is interested in doing that meeting of all the boards and commissions on that fifth Monday of April. We talked about that briefly before, but I just wanted to see if that's something we should start, like, doing a save the date on for with the other commissions and committees.
Okay, thank you.
Sean?
Yeah.
Before you jump.
Sure, go ahead.
Just want to jump back up. The website committee's meeting tomorrow at 3:30. Just wanted to mention.
Good point. Okay.
What
Well, I think it's over $5,000, right, Justin?
Actually, the burn piece of the proposal is only like $800.
That's fairly expensive because we
I think
omitted,
I'd still,
we omitted the reseeding and plugs.
right. So I think I'd probably still just get approval on that because it's gonna be pretty noticeable in the community, so I just want to make sure everybody was well aware of what was gonna be done. So I'll just bring that back to that, either January or February.
And you are going to proceed on the 4/21 meeting date? Do you have
Yeah.
dates? Okay.
It's just one day.
Are we gonna have enough tables in here for that?
The burn permit?
No, for the group meeting.
Oh, yeah. We'll find a way to make it work. I'm just in a really big circle.
You can always bring it at the regular table, if they do it.
Right.
Is the burn, Courtney, in the area south of the cemetery, or is it in the more populated area?
It's a lot of it.
Yeah, it's not the manicured pieces, but it's the natural area of Mill Creek Park South, which is from
Like
the
the
bridge
hillside.
to the cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah, basically not anywhere that's a planting bed that's mulched, but any of the natural areas. I mean, it did, watching them do it at the, when they did the rain gardens, with the exception of it being by the gas station and Marie freaking out that there was smoke coming from the gas station. It was very different. I mean, I'd never really seen them, but, it was just a person walking around with a little pack and, they burned the area right in front of them. I mean, it's not like flames and, roaring and burnout. It's just very isolated and, they go around and burn, specific areas, so. And I was really surprised with how, because we talked about it for years, but never really done it. And it really made a difference in the rain gardens because I think the stuff that was supposed to grow found a way to grow back.
And we did talk to Paul Levinoff about it, and he was supportive. He just wanted to confirm that, around trees and anchored areas would be avoided, which
Sure.
is obviously the intent.
But there's a lot of natural area that could be dealt with.
It will come for a while, it'll be back in 2 weeks.
Right, it's pretty
And
quick.
they intended to do it right before the wettest part of the season, so that it's a quick turnaround time.
So early spring.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see that item then in
Yeah.
a meeting or two.
Hopefully.
Any other questions for Courtney? I'll jump back or things. Under my report, I'll try to touch on the topic, Paul, that you raised briefly, which is the pedestrian safety, crosswalk safety. Depending on which social media outlet or newspaper or online, something that you look at, you hear a lot about the topic of pedestrian safety in Dexter. And I think the concerning part of it is that much of it is presented in a way that implies that crosswalks are unsafe. And that's troubling to me. I don't know if it bothers anybody else or not, but this council and councils before us have worked very hard at trying to improve the public safety, improve the safety of those crosswalks in a number of different ways throughout town, not just along the major street corridors. But the schools have targeted 4 areas that they would like some improved devices. And the rectangular rapid flashing beacon is the one that they have really centered on as the device that they think would work at all 4 of these. Council's aware that we have one now at Baker or near the intersection of Baker and Grand. So that's what we're talking about. They have issued 3 versions of a draft report, which our engineers from OHM have looked at and provided a couple rounds of feedback on. This past Friday afternoon, 2 members of OHM and Courtney and I met with Superintendent Dr. Timmis, the board chairman, Michael Wendorf, 2 members from Granger, Jerry and Greg Brand, and then their traffic consultant, I'm sorry, Sharon Raschke, the financial director, and then their consultant, Jim Valenta, who some of you have known has worked in around the community for a while. And the school's goals in being a part of that meeting were basically to ask us, what else do we want done relative to the report? And I know that none of you have seen the report. I commented to everybody there that council has not looked at any of these drafts as a body. The reason for that is when we put a report out, or when a report gets put out, it's my feeling that it should be as accurate and as direct to the recommendation as it can be, and there's still several factual inaccuracies in the report. Now, they're not intended to be inaccurate, but they're slightly misleading. An example of it is they reference as part of their arguments for studying the Ann Arbor-Kensington crossing that a student was killed in the school crosswalk when struck by a car. And their location is correct. There was a student killed at that location. The student was hit by a car, but what they don't state is that happened in 1995, November of 95, and there wasn't even a marked crosswalk there.
And it was without bump outs at the intersection.
There wasn't a sidewalk or anything leading anybody across the street there. So it lacks a little bit of context, and OHM tried to point that out to them in terms of their comments to them. I do think that the schools are looking for help. Certainly if there's a perception that something is unsafe, I think we need to all work together to try and fix that. They are making decisions, or have made some decisions recently, that affect the potential number of users of those crosswalks. They don't currently have an open policy that encourages people to walk to school. They will in fact say they believe that the crosswalks are not safe enough to do that. They have indicated that they would very much like for people to be able to walk to school. It would decrease the amount of busing that they have to do. But to your question about the daycare or the after-school care places on Dexter Ann Arbor Road, Morning Star, and then the newer one, the schools made the decision not to bus the kids after school from Wiley to Morning Star. What's that?
In the morning, yeah.
And in the morning and the afternoon, not to bus them in either direction. So they put the burden on the business to get the kids from the school to there and back. Which means that, from Wiley, one way of walking there is straight up Kensington and across at Kensington and over to Morning Star. Relative to the new business that is potentially going to open in a month, a more direct route might be across the actual campus and cross at the light at Meadowview. It depends on how they choose to do that. Okay, they could also bring them up Kensington and then go all the way down. So that they've made the schools have made a decision there that's affecting how many kids are going to be on the network. They haven't decided, something else I learned is that they bus approximately 150 kids from Creekside across the street to the bus loop in the afternoon after school. And they'd like to get rid of that. They haven't made the decision to do that. They'd like to get rid of that as well, which would mean that if they would like, a device at the Baker Road crossing. And we talked about the difference. At Baker Road right now, if you can picture it, there's an island that was installed as part of the Safe Routes to School program. And in terms of levels of crosswalk, when you evaluate crosswalks, there's type A, B, C, and D. Adding an island and having a rectangular rapid flashing beacon are actually equivalent treatments. However, they would like one step more. They would like extra protection there, and they feel that even though there's a flashing light that's there now during school hours at Baker, that the beacon would be something that could be used all the time instead of just having the light that's there now flash all the time. Something that could be activated by the student. I think that OHM, without trying to summarize every comment they made, I think their traffic engineer was reluctant to say which ones he agreed with or disagreed with. At this point, they're going to put their thoughts in writing and get those over to the schools. We haven't officially seen any letter describing that. There was some concern that if you're crossing that many kids, maybe a rectangular rapid flashing beacon isn't enough. Maybe you actually need to stop traffic, i.e. a hawk, that's what people have heard, or a pedestrian hybrid beacon is the more generic phrase for that. But I think the good news is we agreed to meet again. What was the date, if you recall? The 12th or something?
Yeah.
Somewhere around February 11th or 12th, of that first Tuesday, I think, after our first meeting in February. We were going to have another meeting. We committed to them that OHM would get them a written set of comments, something that they could get back to them, and then the goal being that when the report does get issued, it can then be presented to us with comments and context from OHMs and recommendations, that kind of thing for discussion for us to consider. Some of these things, there's a cost to these things, and certainly we'd have to program them if we decided to add them to our grid. I think one of the other elements that was discussed was that, they've been pinging for rectangular rapid flashing beacons at these 4 locations, and I should mention those. The one is at Kensington and Ann Arbor Road. The other's at Baker, between the 2 schools. The other 2 are on Dan Hoy, one across from Walkabout Creek, where Walkabout Creek could come across north, and then the other is the newest crossing down at the east end of the schools where the drive from Mill Creek comes out. There was some discussion that maybe that's not that far one to the east is maybe not the best spot for a crosswalk. That if we're going to do this, that with the recent road improvements, that crosswalk has actually gone from 2+ lanes wide to now almost 4 lanes wide. So if you're going to add a beacon or add a crosser, make it an actual crosswalk, maybe we should think about moving it either east or west to shorten the distance, maybe find a better spot. So you might see some changes in the actual report recommendations too, but all those things were discussed, and I think it was, a good discussion. I promised to fill you folks in today, and Mr. Wendorf is supposed to be telling his board tonight that he expects the report to be finalized within a month or so, and that hopefully by the end of the first quarter, we could have some type of meaningful discussion here that, leads to some activity. On a parallel track, just watching those over the last several weeks, I think several of them could use more light. If you go to several of them, the Baker one, for example, gets all the attention from the schools because it's on the busiest street. But there is an overhead light there, but it's very dim, and it's not very close to projecting the light on the crosswalk like it needs to be. I think at a minimum, we can do ourselves a lot of good, and the community at the times when it's not daylight and kids are crossing or people are crossing, we can light those things up a little better at all 4 of those locations than they are. And I asked Courtney to help get a meeting set up with DTE so that we can get some preliminary options from them. And we're going to meet this Friday morning. I think, is that what we picked? We're going to meet this Friday morning with DTE and just get their community planner, make him aware of that, so that we can at least have that cost as well, get it on their radar. Because, some of this stuff takes time to plan. Courtney, help me, what else have I left out? Questions on that topic? It's not an easy one to complete.
Yeah, so the meeting that you had was, get back up here. The meeting you had was on the 11th with the school?
Yeah, just this past Friday, Paul, yep, 11 o'clock in the afternoon.
And so there were, how many representatives from the school there? And give me a number.
1 school board member.
Okay.
And then,
Dick?
Michael, I'm sorry, the board chair,
Michael, yeah.
Wonder. No other school board members, and then
Okay.
Dr. Timmis,
Yep.
Sharon Brashke, and then the 2 Brands, Craig and
Yep.
Jerry. And then Jim Blanker, the traffic consultant.
And
On our side, it was Courtney and I, and then 2 members of Orchard Hills and McClement. Patrick Droz, and then Steve Deering, who's the senior traffic engineer.
And from that, then, there is to be 1 month from now, the report theoretically finished. And what that report is that their report, our report, combination report.
It'll be their report that they can then share with their school board, and a report that we can share with the council. And we'll also have OHM's recommendations on actions following up from the report. They did, the schools did a good job of calling to light a few things. They put some cameras on some of these intersections and tried to capture what it was like for people crossing the street. And I'm not sure that the data that they collected made their point necessarily, like in all some instances it doesn't show there'd be a problem. It shows the cars stopping when people come to the crosswalk. But for every good story where the camera might have been on, there's, I think as community members we know there's times when people haven't stopped, and you can read on the public media times where people have seen people not respect the pedestrian. And so we have to take into account that too, even though they tried to spend some money to capture some evidence to show what they're trying to, lead towards with the rapid flashing beacons. I'm not sure it was all captured the way they wanted it, but I think they deserve some credit for raising the issue and awareness. And I think if we take a hard look at some of those crosswalks and maybe even some of the others, we can do some things to.
So I noticed on Dan Hoy that there are actually 2 different miles per hour on that road.
Yes.
The 35 and the 25. And I don't know where.
The 25 is the school.
I know, but how, I mean,
School hours.
how,
Well,
Within the signage.
within the signage, between the 2 25-mile signs.
seems
And it's
to me
also time.
seems to me that's confusing a little
We
bit,
did that at their request or somebody's request years ago when we made the school zones.
Well, I guess 35 to 25, if it's 35, it's going to be 45, and it's 25, it's going to be 35. That's your driving, people drive through, they always get the 10 miles per hour over it, they calculate there, okay?
Well, we talked about trying to make sure we have consistent signage. If the schools really do feel, and we feel after studying it, I guess that the school crosswalk should be at Kensington, we should switch the yellow diamond signs to the neon yellow Pentagon school crossing signs. So that those are, not that it's going to stop a car, but that's the official signage. I mean, it's not signed as a school crossing, even though they think that's where it should be. So we've got a couple of those smaller things to figure out, and you'll notice if you go to Inverness, we've got the Pentagon neon sign in Inverness. That's where we think, but we've only got 1 sign there. We don't have it signed coming eastbound or southeastbound. So we need to clear up a few things on our end too, just to.
And was there any discussion at all about moving the present crossing guard that's at Kensington to another spot, since there is a stop light there?
So it was discussed, it wasn't suggested that we move the crossing guard, but the topic of using additional crossing guards was mentioned, and Steve Deering did bring that up. We didn't specifically bring up moving it, although that thought has, I will admit, crossed my mind. They really have the Mill Creek crossing protected. I mean, you've got the best thing you can have there. You've got a light, you've got school warning signs, and you've got a crossing guard during school hours.
You said Kensington, the crossing guard.
Sorry,
Meadowview. Kensington does not.
Meadowview's right.
Kensington does not have crossing
No,
guards.
Meadowview has, yeah, the presence one of Meadowview. And how I was there when they did the walk bike to school one time, and actually stood there with the guard, and it was kind of a waste of time because the light was there and everything. I mean, maybe it wasn't a waste of time, but it seemed like they were thoroughly protected there. I thought, well, since we're paying for it,
well,
maybe we should.
Those are all options we can discuss. I think those are all on the table.
And once again, the amount that we pay a crossing guard per year is
It's around $4,000 or $5,000.
I used to figure for 5. Let's use that figure, okay?
I think so, because there's a lot of, there's quite a bit of.
And we don't know what the, well, maybe we do know what the cost of the flashing beacons are.
They're, well, depending on which one and where, they're probably $30,000 each or so. $30,000 each or so.
One of their concerns with the crossing guard was that some of their, a lot of their concern is like kids with after-school activities, so,
Oh, yeah.
and they can't get people to do it. It's
Okay.
very hard for them to fill the crossing guard position.
And I'll tell you that more than once I've seen, when they've had school activities, particularly a football game, or something in maybe a parent night, they'll find a place they can't park, so they'll park across on another school site. And I'll tell you what, they do not even come close to going to that site where the flashing beacon is. They just walk straight across the street all the time. So to your point, there are some common sense things they have to do there. I know that it's more, and generally it's a man with a child and they have their hand and all that, but they don't use it. They just get across, so they're either late or they want to get to the meeting, get a seat or whatever it is, okay? So there's concern there. I still think though that whatever we can do to make it as safe as possible for every child, every parent, every walker in this community, that it's the right thing to do, okay? And I know it's not going to be cheap to do that, but I want it done the right way and try to get at least an agreement to them that they feel that the reason I ask all these questions is that you know that I go to the forum every Saturday, almost every Saturday, and I was there at the last one. Mr. Windorf was there, spoke, and he admitted that it's the first time he's ever been there, but he brought the issue there because he thought it was a good place to start a community discussion. Well, it's been a community discussion for a while before last Saturday, Saturday.
Yeah, it's been, yes. Well, and it really, I think, it's important that we do the education on those. I mean, we tried, she and I, with the first email when the one on Grand was activated. Walkers in whatever town you're in need to walk defensively. Okay, and the car wins every time. And even if we provide better opportunities to push a button and have those things flash, it's not a ticket to go. It's not an automatic push it and go. The walker has to make sure that those cars have stopped. And we have to think about that a little bit, because if it takes a few seconds for the car to stop in one direction and the other, it could be that the actual light stops. We've got, like I mentioned, the timing of the one on Baker, 20 seconds. Well, 20 seconds will go by pretty fast if you push the button and then you wait to see if the first one stops. Might not be flashing by the time you're all the way across the way. So anyway, my point is, we got to really educate people on how to use these things while we have the first one up. If additional ones end up getting put in, fine, somewhere down the line.
I'll tell you, the Hawk light that I'm familiar with is the one on Huron Street there in Ann Arbor, there by the Y. And I'll tell you what, that is the most confusing thing. People do not understand it at all, and it will continually flash in red, and people will go right through it because there's nobody in the crosswalk, and there hasn't been anybody in the crosswalk for 10 seconds, and it's still flashing red, and they just go through it. So that, to me...
Paul, there's actually a rule in the Michigan manual that talks about those, that suggests that you shouldn't put them at intersections, that they should be 100 feet away from intersections. And if you know where that one is, it's right at an intersection. Because the people that pull up this way can't necessarily see what that shows. They don't have enough vision line.
That one's very confusing.
Well, I think they're going to take that one out. But anyway, I think there's more to come on this.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
And if you want.
I'll start by saying, concerning pedestrian safety, I'm very disappointed at the apparent tone of the comments I've heard from school board members. The city has spent a lot of treasure and time improving pedestrian conditions throughout the entire community. And I think it's important that we do continue to have some sort of standards for when we do things and don't do things. I'd like to have flashing beacon right across my house, because there's a lot of yahoos from the township that will zip by to get through. that was disappointing to hear that. I do think right away we ought to work at getting the lighting improved, as you mentioned, and I'd also be supportive short-term of getting the little flappy things that we stick in front of the Dairy Queen out there. I know it doesn't require cars to stop, but it makes another psychological thing that gives attention. So if we can get more of those to get out there, I'd be very supportive of that. That's all.
Thank you, good comments. Other questions for me on anything? Okay, I will move on to consent agenda. Item J.
I move we approve the one item on the consent agenda, bills and payroll in the amount of $240,071.11.
Support.
Motion by Fisher, second by Bell. Thank you both. All those in favor of approving the bills and payroll, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have no old business to attend to. We have 7 new business items, starting with new business item L1, consideration of youth board representatives.
I move we do this. Page 130. For all the commissions listed there, Parks and Rec, Arts, Culture and Heritage, Planning Commission, and City Council. Except I would note that I think we have to add City Council to the informational sheet. And I would also throw out for consideration that the city shall provide a mentor, leaving it open that it could be whomever. That's my motion.
Okay, motion by Shells,
I'll second. Get it on the floor for discussion.
okay, that's fine, right? Okay, comments? Mr. Smith?
I have a few here. I don't believe the planning commission is ready to take this on. And I don't think we've ever specifically talked about members or youth members for the city council. So I would prefer that the initial youth representatives before the Parks and Recreation and the Arts and Culture and Heritage Committee. Then on page 131 of the packet, where it talks about the description, it says an opportunity for 2 student representatives on the following committees and commissions. I don't know why we want to consider 2 representatives on each one. I know personally on the planning commission, 1 may be too much if we're forced to do that. And I'm not sure why we're trying to get 2 for each one. Under eligibility, I still believe freshmen should not be included. They have an awful lot on their plate just starting in high school. And I don't think that should be extended to them. I think it should be for 10 through 12. In preference given to 11 to 12. And then in the selection process, it says student representatives shall serve from the time of their selection through June of the following year. So if somebody is appointed this spring, does it go all the way to June of 2020?
Yep.
That would be my read of it, yes.
Yeah. But say they were appointed in January, would you put them on for a year and a half, or?
Yeah, we were trying to get some consistency in the students by having their.
But you may run into a situation where the person's a senior.
Well, right, then we would just have to, that would create a vacancy when they graduated if they didn't.
But, yeah, I don't think the planning commission is a suitable place. We talked about looking to maybe, if a student expressed an interest in planning and started attending the meetings, then maybe we would get them involved based more on a project. Or, some particular topic that they could, focus on and, not try to grasp the overall complexity of everything that we take care of there.
Donna, you had your hand up?
Yeah, when you're saying the planning commission isn't ready, are you speaking as liaison to the planning commission?
Yes.
Okay. Then, if that is the case, then I can also speak to Arts, Culture, and Heritage as liaison. That is not something that they are excited about doing. We'll comply if the ordinance is passed, but if that's how we're getting our information out, it'd be easy for me to say, well, Arts, Culture, and Heritage doesn't want it, but you can have it planning and parks. And I think that it's important to know what these committees and commissions have said about this project. I'm wondering if phasing might be something we could consider doing and learn from that appointment and move on to the next, or set a schedule for ourselves or a goal, something like that.
I think planning just would prefer to set up a little bit slightly different, expectations for what the student could be involved in.
And ACH has said basically the same thing. Send us students. We'll be glad to place them on any kind of project that we have. Would welcome them, but as far as having them be on the actual committee, that was not where they were.
Ms. Knight?
I think a good committee to start this with would be the Parks and Recs Committee, because they seem to be very excited about it and want to have a student come and work with them. So maybe we just should start in that area, and if it works well, expand to the next committee, and the next commission, and then finally the City Council.
Good idea.
That's what I would always.
Need a bigger meeting room.
What's that?
Need a bigger meeting room.
Yes.
It's a little crowded over there.
Right?
For parks.
Oh, park, yeah.
Planning is here. Parks.
Right,
That's
right,
what
right,
parks.
That's true, isn't it?
Knock on the wall.
Yeah, right.
We recently had a couple of ACH meetings up there. 11 members.
Why did the parks meet there?
I don't remember. It wasn't very large, and I don't know, they just started 2 years ago.
What's that?
Before I even got here. I don't remember why Parks meets there. I don't know the answer to that. It's just been that way for as long as I.
Well, it used to be here.
I didn't mean to start.
Yeah, that's not.
Way to go, Scott.
Troublemaker already.
My intention wasn't clear.
So,
Y'all need to get to know me a little bit.
Justin, have comments?
No, I think we just want to know what to do.
Okay.
The only thing that I had was to Mr. Smith's comment, that there was discussion about 2 members of the student rep committee, for student reps for each committee, because the thought was that it would encourage both of them to attend if they had a compatriot alongside them, and or if one couldn't attend and the other one could.
So I'm completely supportive of this opportunity. If we want to start somewhere, I like your suggestion. I think it will be very easily explode if we just get it started. I mean, once we start advertising. but I guess I would ask, the motion on the floor is to do all four. So we
Who made the motion? Zach?
Zach made the motion for all four.
And who seconded?
Support by Knight.
Can I clarify something about the motion? You made a comment about a mentor. Was that intended to be a fourth bullet point under the city shall? Do you see what I'm talking?
Yes, that was my intention.
Okay.
So Zach, thank you.
So,
There's a couple of procedural ways to handle this.
yep, there are a couple. I think my observations, I've been following communities that have youth members for almost 10 years, and it is very frightening to start with. I think just bringing them in for a project isn't as good a way to engage or educate, and we don't get as much from it, and they don't get as much from it. What my spaghetti I'll throw out there is the city shall provide an opportunity for up to 2 student representatives. So that allows us some flexibility. If we don't get quality candidates, we don't feel like we have to put someone on there. For those committees that are more skeptical, perhaps we just do 1 to start so they can see how it works. I understand that it'd be better for them to come out in pairs, but after a couple meetings, hopefully they'll find out that we don't fight too much. I do like the idea of us having on city council. I think I mentioned before that that was kind of a nice place to end up. I think if we're asking other groups to do it, we ought to do it too. I do think it'll be tough for freshmen to do it. That is a big change. I don't know if we have to remove it from here, but it'd be part of the consideration. And I guess that's all that I have.
To that, there is, I believe included in here, preference will be given to students in grades 1
Yep.
to 12.
Yep.
So you're offering to change the wording on first sentence to say up to 2 students?
Yes, I would friendly amend myself.
Ms. Knight, is that okay with you?
Sure.
But your motion also includes city council?
Yes.
And the description document doesn't include city council?
Right.
I'm sorry, Donna.
We all stare at you. Please do. I will just say one last thing in support of Julie's idea of phasing. If you're going to bring a student in to a group, you want that group to be supportive and welcoming, and we can't legislate that. So I'm thinking that it might be wise to phase something if it goes well, or say every 6 months or whatever you want, we're going to take a look at this, take a look at that. Again, I just am concerned, and I spoke one other time about this, my concern is not so much about ACH members and us, it's what happens to the kid that's out there that we're offering this experience, and I want it to be a really good one. So that's all I'm going to say about it.
Paul?
Well, I'm in favor of this for all the commissions, committees, and the council. I just don't see what there's appear to be about, okay? It doesn't seem to be like it's the end of the world to have this done. It's an opportunity for young people, which we try to encourage to do this, be involved. I won't take the time to tell you about the funeral I went to on Saturday about this lady that passed away, and how she started out in 7th grade being an advocate, and ended up to be the head of the Women's Center in University of Michigan. But it starts early, and it can't start early. We don't know what kid out there is sitting there and say, oh, geez, I'd like to try that, see how it could work. As far as the commissions, committees now, we need to be the adults in this process, okay? We need to want to have the compassion to welcome them, to encourage them. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's the time to do it.
Mr. Mel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I support this, especially with the inclusion of city council, because if we're going to do it, let's put our money where our mouth is. It works elsewhere, and I agree with Paul and Zach that we really need to create opportunities for people, young people in the community.
Okay, so just so I'm aware of what we have on the table right now, we have all 4 boards. We have a motion to change the language on the informational description to say for up to 2 students. We have adding a 4th bullet, the city shall provide, I'm making this up, a mentor for each student, assign a mentor. Presumably that's coming from student council, but it doesn't have to be, or does it?
I left it vague. It could be one mentor for both folks on a commission or council, or the one-to-one, however it works.
But did you intend it to be a mentor from the commission? Or
From the commission? Yeah. Well,
That's what I
asked.
answered.
That's what I,
It could be or staff if it's, if the staff doesn't have enough time.
But from the city, like
Right,
yes,
from the city.
Yep.
someone in the,
Yeah.
Yeah. So that they don't
Somebody
get
who's willing.
stage fright when they get up there.
Yeah, somebody who's willing.
Who will assign this? Who would assign this?
I will volunteer right now.
to assign.
I can
Oh, no.
assign, I mean, staff would just
We can-
assign it.
We can work this out when we get from people that are interested, we can figure out, we can talk to people. Mr. Smith?
When this was proposed and all this started coming together, I thought we made it clear it was going to be up to each board, committee, commission to decide whether they participated or not. And now we're turning around taking that out of their hands.
I thought we just asked for their feedback on it. We didn't ever say that that was gonna, we never said that they were gonna get to choose if they wanted it. I think the only thing with Zach's motion was adding the city council to that sheet too.
Yeah.
Other than that.
In the first paragraph. Yeah. Okay, everybody understands the motion that's been made?
No, I think.
Do I need to repeat it? That's why.
No,
Do I need to repeat it?
No.
We'll give it a try and see how it
Okay.
works.
Ms. Jones, please call the vote.
Okay, Bell,
yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Smith,
No.
Fisher,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much. New business item L2, consideration of resolution to purchase property for the construction of a new modern fire station. There was also a supplemental motion, I believe, put on the table. Which I haven't read yet.
Who prepared this one?
I hope.
Zach and I
Mr. Smith and I.
work together.
Do you have an extra copy? I don't.
Sure. So, I believe Mr. Cousins asked that this be put on the agenda for this meeting.
I did. Mr. Smith and Mr. Michelle did make provide the information for the resolution. I'll be glad to make the motion unless either one of them would like to do that, since they were the ones that were the authors of the actual document here. I'll make the motion. You want to make the motion, Zach? Do you want to? I'll motion to approve the resolution. That you see in front of you, a resolution that is dated on the 14th of January 2019.
The one that's passed out tonight.
The one that's just passed out tonight. Yes, replace the resolution.
Is this replacing the resolution that's in the packet?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second. The primary difference between this and the resolution that was in the packet, which was carried over from previous meetings, with the Dan Hoy property is currently on our list of possible sites for a new fire station. And so that's still under consideration for that possibility. Also in the packet tonight and later on under new business, we're going to be discussing the possible sale of the Dan Hoy property to a developer. And I started thinking, here we have something that we haven't made a decision on yet as far as the location and whether we're going to build a new fire station. But we're preparing to go ahead and sell the property and remove that from the list of possible locations. That's the only piece of vacant property that the city owns that is a buildable site and is of size that would fit, allow a fire station to fit on the property. So, and given what we received in the packet about the potential sale of the Dan Hoy property, it looks, there's pretty good odds that at our next meeting in January, we would be asked to consider a purchase agreement. In fact, we received another copy of a potential purchase agreement in tonight's materials. So, and the other resolution which called for the acquisition of property and to make the decision of building the fire station on the property located at Dexter Ann Arbor Road and Meadowview Drive. So this kind of built upon the idea of acquiring the vacant property at that location, but it removed the decision about whether we go forward with building a fire station there or not. And that's a important decision. We're talking about having public meetings prior to making that decision. But I felt if we are going to release the Dan Hoy property for sale, we're taking that option away from us without another alternative. And I just felt that I've been a believer of the need to build a new station for a long time. And that's why I proposed buying the Dan Hoy property to begin with. But then along came the bus hub, then the roundabouts, and Dan Hoy as the perfect solution, which it never was, but it was a viable solution. Its ranking as far as potential sites dropped. But right now, we don't own any other property that would be suitable to build a new station on. So if we're going to go ahead and sell off the Dan Hoy property, I think it's very important for us to take steps to look into acquiring some other vacant property. And so this resolution sets that process in motion so that we begin some negotiations to figure out, if we can acquire the vacant property there on Dexter and Arbor Road, and figure out how much it's going to cost us, and see if we can figure out a deal there. This also asks for that when the Dan Hoy property, if and when it is sold, that any proceeds gained from the sale of that property, that it would be utilized to purchase the new vacant property. And the thinking there is, Dan Hoy property was essentially bought for a location of the new fire station. And yes, we've made use of it for the community gardens and some storage places there for the DPW. But the original intent in buying it was to have a site for a potential new fire home. And so I think the funds coming from that should be utilized to also purchase a potential site. So that's kind of the history of where this document has evolved from.
First of all, we do own the 3045 Broad property. So whereas number 2 is technically not correct. And tying up the discussion of what happens with the Dan Hoy property to any potential negotiations for a maybe potential fire station. After working through the process with Avalon and Faith in Action, doesn't really sit very well with me.
This would have been great about 2 months ago, because we've led everybody down a path now where Faith in Action Board's in line and Avalon's in line, and now we're gonna say, oh, sorry, we're pulling the rug out from under everything because we won't be able to file for $400,000 worth of funding that we need to make the project work. So it's just very...
I'm in favor of the
Right, but there's a timeline. There was a timeline that everybody knew that we were working towards, and this just puts a monkey wrench in it right at the last minute, which is just disappointing, because like I said, it was, everything was coming together.
I think it just gives us an opportunity to find out about this other property.
In the next 2 weeks, we're never going to get that done by January 28th, and that's when we would have to make the decision on the Dan White property, so.
Sure.
Albeit somebody probably tried to get a hold of me, but I didn't see this until tonight on the table. And then it came in with this. I thought it was a replacement for the resolution, and it was something else, my mistake. So I haven't really spent much time on this, but initially, I don't know what negotiate means. Does it mean tie up funds? Does it mean just chatter about maybe we'd like to get it, what's the price? And if it's just to get the price, we can do that without adopting a resolution to negotiate.
We've already done that.
They'll come in, they'll talk with us about what it is. I don't see the need for that. The second piece of this that is hard for me to swallow is that there are some people that believe that Dan Hoy Road was purchased with the intent of putting a fire department there, but there are some people that did not think that. And so for this group, by resolution, to dictate where this council and staff work together to do funds, I don't feel very good about dedicating any of the money that was allocated to the replacement to go to the new project. I'm not okay with that. So those are two pieces that I object to.
Ms. Knight?
As I'm reading this, and the way I understand it, it's more of a document to expedite the process to secure the property more so than it is to hold up the process for the Avalon development. I'm in favor of selling for the Avalon development, the Dan Hoy property. So I guess I would have to vote against this because I don't want to hold it up. But again, I think it's more to move more quickly toward purchasing the MAM property, which I am in favor of.
Changes can certainly be made in the resolution. So if there's something that needs to be removed or changed.
I guess I would remove the word "not" on the very last result. Because it's saying we will not sell this property until we get a MAP property secured.
All I know is that, I know that this is a long process that we've gone through, but we've been working towards a public meeting. It seems like every couple months, or every couple meetings, you get a version of this resolution that Zach created as a draft back in October, November, forget the month.
November 5th.
November 5th?
Yeah, because I put the
That's
watermark.
right. That's right. Apologize for forgetting the date, but I was close there. But, I agree that we studied Dan Hoy for a while, and whether it was purchased for a fire station or it was purchased because of some other reason, that I don't think is universally agreed upon. As much as you stated it from one way, Jim, I think that when we had the discussions as a council about inviting Avalon in, and the council priority of trying to help do the best we could to create affordable living opportunities in our community, and seeing this as one, I think we, without maybe passing a motion, indicated that we wanted a different use for the Dan Hoy property. So to tie it up, well, let me know if you disagree, because that's kind of,
Nobody brought it up.
That was exactly the comment, the conversation that was put on the table is, should we talk to Avalon about using the remaining Dan Hoy property? And if the thought was no, then we shouldn't have had them come in. We shouldn't have formed a committee in our resolution of organizational matters to meet and talk about that. So I think that we've moved past the Dan Hoy property, and we all know we've moved past it as a site for the fire station. We've even asked our chief if he likes it, and he doesn't. So I don't know that this is, I don't know what this is doing relative to tying up the Dan Hoy property. If you want to have a discussion on where the proceeds should go, that's fair, but the actual sale of the property wouldn't occur until potentially 15 months from the time that we act next meeting on the sale. It won't be until 2020 of some type, because they need to be able to hold the property to apply for a few things, one of which is this $400,000 through the county, and the next is for the tax credit. Nancy, if I'm saying something wrong, jump in here, but so all of this, we have a way here of tying all these things together into a knot that we don't know how to get out of, but there was a simple, good thing for the community going forward here on Dan Hoy that is turning into a cluster with this. So I'm going to vote no on it. There's other ways to do the same types of things, but, and I agree with Donna, we shouldn't be acting on something this serious without seeing it either before it comes before us. So, although, you know, we've all had a chance to think about that specific opportunity, so. Anyway, I'm going to vote no on this. Donna?
Again, I'd like to pose the question, can we not find out the pricing of this piece of property without passing a resolution to do so?
Yeah,
What is
the
it?
pricing,
That's not,
money.
we have not
What?
secured an agreement.
And so that, I didn't know what negotiate meant, so now tell me what exactly negotiate means.
Negotiate with the intent to buy.
And who's gonna negotiate, and how much money are we gonna pledge towards the intent to, how much money will be committed to the intent to buy?
We know that they have placed a figure that we've heard before, okay? And we know that we have not countered that with anything. Not a figure, okay? We sent a group, as I understood it, to talk to them. They did. They came back with a figure which they indicated to us. We have not had the opportunity or the will to start that process on, to finish the negotiations there, and this was an attempt to do that. It was an attempt also not to, we know we had deadlines and we've gone past, that we could have put down secure money on those sites, on that site, on the MAV site, and locked it up with the potential that we could have lost it if we decided not to go forward with it. But that has passed, and we have not made any effort to secure that site. You know, I find it ironic that, and maybe it's good, I mean, I think it's great. I support it, you've heard me say it. I supported the idea of public housing in this community, and I still do. I know what Faith in Action has gone through over the past 5 to 6 years in finding sites and then having them moved, and finding sites and finding them not adequate. This is an opportunity for that to stop. I get that. And it moved fast. Faster than I thought it ever was going to move, okay? I also know that we've been dealing with potential purchase of or a remodel of a fire station or a purchase of a fire hall for over 20 years. In the last 5 years intently we've had that. And we've not secured any decision on that. And when we look around in this community, there are no other sites other than 2 that I know of. Sean said 3. I don't think he would vote for 3540, but to put a fire hall, but maybe he would. That would be a potential, another site that we own to put a fire hall on. We haven't even investigated any of the issues that relate around that. Traffic issues, anything that would take to do that. Let alone the issue of not having any income from that property. What seems to be a priority for use of that property, for the city's benefit of that property. So if we don't have the ability to have a site to build a modern fire hall that could be expandable, then we have to make a decision of how we're going to move forward to do that. And some of us felt it was not going to be, we weren't going to give up the opportunity to have a modern fire hall by having to wait any longer. That probably could be sold tomorrow, could be sold next week. If you think that we put the people in Avalon in a bind. What would that do for us to put in a bind? If that property on the map is gone, and we haven't even made an offer on it. And as far as Sean's comment about we're gonna have this public meeting, I said the last time we had this discussion, that the first question somebody's gonna ask is, do you own the property on Dexter and Iowa Road? And the answer is no, we don't. And they're gonna say, well, what are you talking about for if you don't own it? They may not be, by the time that comes around, the end of February, the 1st of March, it probably may be sold already. We're sitting on a precipice right now that we took a chance it wasn't going to be sold until today. It's been indicated before that a vote has been taken that 8140 would not be the fire hall. Been passed twice by this council. It has been pointed out that those issues didn't come until the night of the meeting.
Just like this.
No, this was well documented that this was going to be a resolution to purchase property for the construction of a new modern fire hall, okay? Now, I don't want to hold up that one. But I also don't want to lose that property out there on Dan Hoy. If we don't make the purchase, we don't make this process move forward, we have potential of losing it, and where do we go then? Nowhere. We go right back to 8140, is what a number of people in this council have wanted from the very beginning. Not the majority.
Ms. Knight and then Ms. Fisher.
I guess I would like to see Zach and Jim Smith rewrite the resolution that Zach prepared in, when did you say it was, October, November? Just like the one that we have in our packet. I'd rather see them rewrite that so we can bring that to the next meeting rather than pass this tonight. And we will have something that we can take action on at the next meeting, something official that everyone can understand. And not a simple resolution, but you can get it recategorized.
Are you done, Julie?
You done, Julie?
Sure.
Okay, Ms. Fisher, yeah, thank you.
My question again was, we're looking at passing a resolution without discussing what our offer, our counter offer is going to be. And my question was, who are we sending? What kind of figures are we authorizing them to use to negotiate potential sale? And this right here doesn't say anything about that.
That's the types of things that would be discussed during the closed session.
Correct.
Which closed session?
The one that said
Later tonight?
It's on the agenda.
Well, I'd rather discuss it tonight and you bring it back with correct information then for the next meeting.
What do you say? I didn't understand what you meant by correct information.
There's nothing that tells me I'm being asked to pass this resolution and then just take it for granted that I'm going to really love what comes out of executive session regarding the figures. I think we need to discuss that first, and then we can decide, do we want to vote on this or do we not?
Council would take a vote on what type of action to take coming out of executive session, whatever is agreed upon there.
Then put it in the resolution that there was a vote taken and as per executive session, so on, so that you've got something substantial or something solid to work with.
Now I can give you an example. When we purchased the property over across the park, the acreage we needed to complete the park. You want to tell me how that went?
I don't.
Slow is the answer.
Slow?
Slow and fast at the same time. It's slow. There were a lot of meetings with Mr. Berner.
Well, when it came about, we didn't set down a parameter. We went in there to negotiate. And we did.
Did we pass a resolution to negotiate?
I'll have to go back, and I think we did. Yeah,
Usually there's some like,
we had some patient, we were going to negotiate to buy that piece of property.
Did that come out of executive session, or did it come out of a resolution before council?
I'm sure it came out of that.
That's what I thought.
Mr. Bell, I think you were waiting.
I just want to briefly express an opinion that, we've met with Avalon and Faith in Action 3 times, starting on December 5th, and we've had at least 2 intervening council meetings. Avalon has presented to council. Council's been aware of what the special meetings, 3 special meetings that entailed. And I haven't heard any opposition to that process or the concept behind it, the ultimate utilization of Dan Hoy property. So I'm very uncomfortable tying up that Dan Hoy property in this resolution because of that. I think it would be extreme bad faith on our part and the wrong thing to do. So I would vote no on this resolution.
Paul made the motion that, first off, I was involved in the initial meetings with Faith in Action and then Avalon. And I do support the Dan Hoy being sold. It was just kind of the idea to start us moving along to acquire some additional vacant property. Yeah, I would be okay, whether it's tonight or, 2 weeks, taking out like the last 2 paragraphs there in the resolution. So it's not tied directly to the, the selling of the Dan Hoy property. But I'd like to get things started to be looking at, okay, can we buy the MAP property or not? Is it still for sale? Is it, at a price that we can afford? So I'm certainly willing to work on a revised resolution for next time, if that's the preference. Paul, you made the motion, so what's your thought on it?
Well, I certainly, as I said, that I don't want to pull the rug out of Avalon, but once again, I didn't think it was going to be going that fast. And never had any indication of anything. That's to their credit. It is going that fast. I certainly have said I support the idea of having a solid, permanent site for Faith in Action and their activities that they have in this community. Always have, always will.
So I'll start by saying I'm ready to vote on the long one tonight. I'm ready November, whenever on that. So just so folks kind of have a base, I am also very supportive of the Avalon project. I've been chirping about affordable housing for about 3.5 years now. I think to kind of give my understanding, the genesis of this is that there are a number of folks on council who don't see current fire station as adequate site. And they look and they say, we've got this property that we could put a modern fire station that fits stuff on it. And we're worried that once that's gone, there aren't that many other sites in the city that are easy to develop. And we want to make sure we've got a space to go before we sell this one. Like who's foolish enough to quit a job without having another job lined up? I say that tongue in cheek because I did that. But that's kind of the basic concern, is that once this vacant property's gone, what then? Then there's no assurance that there's a big enough place to put this that we can get easily without having to go through eminent domain. So that, for those of you that, I think that's kind of the genesis, or what the point was.
So So I guess Jim asked me a question, I would easily be willing to substitute the resolution that was on us before, which people have had a chance to see, for the one we have right now, to solve the problem with Avalon and with Faith in Action, and it would move forward on the process there to enter into a purchase agreement. City Council would determine the additional factors of that, whether the money goes from the sale of the property on Dan Hoy to that, or anything else that we have in the area there.
I think there's,
A couple things that have to be modified in it, because it's
Right,
not appropriate now, but
there's some issues in the motion, or in the resolution there, that I pointed out that night, the first time it came through, that there were some errors in there. And I think they would, it needs to be gone through again and put into a little bit more of a format that's easily understood. I attempted to do that one time there by organizing the different pieces, and I think some more work on that could be done. So it's maybe not quite as lengthy. I think some things can be consolidated together. Because of those issues, I would not be supportive of that resolution tonight.
Lengthy one.
Right.
But you'd be supportive of it be reworked and realigned.
It would depend on what the end result would be.
sorry,
I think, I'm not trying to help you here really on this, but I'm going to help you. I think you guys need to go back and bring something forward that's more clear and doesn't tie up the other thing.
Yeah, I was just
Well, that's what your intent is.
well, that's why he said we would do that, we want to do that, I wanted to move this off of there.
Yeah, Julie suggested it, that whether it's Jim and Zach or whoever wants to get together, well, no, not whoever, you can't do four of you can't get together.
I was kind of waiting on Paul because he made the motion. I was waiting for him to withdraw his motion.
I can withdraw the motion, I guess my question is, what are we doing on the executive session?
Well, we could still, in the executive session, we have some basic information from MAV. We could, as part of the executive discussion, say, hey, here are some terms, see if we can't come back with agreement for us to discuss in 2 weeks.
I'm willing to live with that, I guess.
I
Knowing how
don't
we-
think you want this to fail, because I don't think you want this motion to fail, because you need to
No.
then somehow get it back on the table.
I will withdraw the motion.
That will help.
Who was saying that?
I think it's gonna fail. I don't think we have to
And
vote for it.
if it does, they have to find somebody
Right, right,
to
and
bring
that's
it
what
back.
the discussion
The
is.
difficulty is getting it back
The
on the
original,
table.
which was the one
Right,
sheet.
yes.
Okay.
I'll withdraw the motion. Who was my second? I don't
I-
see. Jim.
Okay, so motion and a second is, then we'll withdraw. Okay, so we're just discussing under new business item L2. Is there any other discussion to take place under new business item L2?
No?
One with the other executive session, that's all I,
That is still on the approved agenda.
thank you.
Okay. New business item L3. Quote from Raymer to perform preventative maintenance on well number 4 and on one high service pump for not to exceed 12.5, and a quote from Lion Mechanical to replace valves at the Ryan Drive well field not to exceed 10,000.
I make that motion to take the supervisor's recommendation to pass this.
Second.
Motion by Fisher, second by Smith. Thank you both.
I have a question.
Okay. go ahead, take the question. and then-
The motion there, where it says for Raymer not to exceed 12.5, on page 142, where it talks about that particular request, it's asking for not to exceed 13,000.
The 12.5 is fine.
Okay, because I noticed that the actual estimate is 12.5, and I didn't know whether you
If they need something else, we're gonna have to come back if there's something
Okay.
wrong, so. I'm not worried.
So, just want to make sure that we had the right figures. Okay, thank you.
Are there further questions on what we're doing here? This is what Dan brought up a couple meetings ago, or a meeting ago. Okay.
Well, just confirm these are budgeted and within budget. Correct.
The 12,500 is, yes, the 10,000 is not
Well,
really the
with
budget amount for that. but
contingency,
it's-
right?
Right.
So I should have
The
been-
10,000 came up because when we changed the pipes, it brought it to.
That's why we do contingencies.
And actually, the water tower project was under the bid, or that's actually where it'll go.
Okay, good clarification, good questions. Other questions? Okay, Ms. Jones, please call the vote to approve both quotes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes. Motion carries 7-0, I believe. New business item L4, consideration of creation of part-time position for the farmer's market manager.
I move we approve the, trying to get on the right page here, the hiring of a part-time farmer's market manager.
Moved by Smith, second by Bell, thank you both.
Gonna put a dollar figure in there?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Say again.
I think it's 6,700 is what my
I didn't hear what you said.
Within a budget of 6,700?
68.
Or
6,800?
I'll include that in my motion.
Okay, good. Discussion, questions from council?
Approximately that figure, right? It's
Yeah, I mean, I'm
approximately
hoping-
450 hours,
It's 6,800 hours.
68. So, in that range.
Everybody knows what we're doing? I see hands, okay, so please call the vote.
Smith?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. New business item L5, discussion of the possible 7651 Dan White housing development. Courtney, I'll turn this directly over to you.
So, yeah, the memo basically lays out where we were at in the process. I included an updated copy of the draft purchase agreement. This has now been reviewed by Evelyn's lawyer. It has not been reviewed or commented on, I guess, by Scott. So what I had asked Scott to do was to take this and actually just call the other attorneys so we don't get into this red line battle back and forth. He didn't have too many concerns. We, at the meeting, talked about adding in the buyback in case so that the property is definitely used for this project and nothing else. So it's in the purchase agreement. It would also probably have to go in some sort of agreement once the property, because this would obviously not be in effect once
It's a
the
piece
property
to protect
closes.
them and protect us, both protect
Correct,
both parties.
right. So there is something in the purchase agreement. There would also be some other document that would kind of be signed at closing that would also protect it moving forward.
Will we see a draft of that document?
I don't know if you would see it before 28th. I was thinking that would just be something that was done in the site plan process and proposed, you know, part of the closing documents, I guess. And then the local unit of government certification was also included in the packet, and that's required to be filed so that It's not basically saying that the community is signed off on anything, it's just saying that the community is aware of the project. The county requires that. Yeah, I think Scott's only question to me was just the length of time, which I don't know is that big of a deal. They did write it a little bit different in giving themselves a couple of funding round applications, which is a little different than what the committees discussed, so that's one thing that.
Where is that in?
Page
I haven't read
1
it,
and 2.
so.
They added language about if they're not successful in the October 1st funding round, that they would get another crack at it in April or October 2020. So that's something that we haven't discussed yet. Other than that, it's.
So go over with me what that other agreement's gonna say, or that other thing's gonna say that we're not gonna see?
Well, I didn't say that you weren't going to see it, I was just going to say, I mean, it's going to, I don't know exactly what it's going to say, Scott was still thinking about it, but it would be something that would have to survive, the purchase agreement's only going to survive the closing, isn't going to survive the closing. Once the closing happens, the purchase agreement doesn't exist anymore, so there needs to be some other, whether it's a development agreement or a document that Scott has not named, that would have some sort of reversion.
There's something in the title or.
Right, something that would be filed, correct.
Like a deed restriction, but.
Maybe that was, yeah,
But
something
that
like
could only
that.
restrict the use. There would have to be an additional legal document to talk about reversion of property.
Right, I mean, the basic point was they didn't, they wouldn't want everyone to be able to resell it to somebody for something completely different. That was the main conversation.
And that language is in here, right?
Yeah, it's in the page 3, the bypass.
Well, why don't you see if Scott can draft something about that that would at least show the key elements that would be in that, whatever that is. So we have some idea what that looks like.
Or even an example of one from another transaction, although that one.
Yeah, I don't know, just whatever it might be.
All right.
Because your point is that this provision while in there is going to be gone once it closes?
Yeah, the purchase agreement doesn't have provisions that last past the purchase agreement. I don't believe so.
I mean, could it be done that way?
It's basically going to be a development agreement that you'll then amend after planning commission and council get done with it.
Right, but if it's not a PUD, then we're not required to have development.
No, but
agreement.
your site plan section does allow you to set the development agreement.
That's where we talked about it, most likely.
It makes the most sense. It's a document you're familiar with. And it can be done that way. Just like you entered into a pre-development agreement with Norfolk, you do the same thing with the.
And that would be done before closing?
Should be.
Okay. But wouldn't a development agreement just be, that wouldn't bind against resale?
It can if you put it in there.
It can, legally?
And I bet you'd be talking.
Like I said, he knew where he was going to put it, I just do not know how to answer the question for you at this time, but I will. I don't remember exactly the term, I didn't realize that was going to be an issue.
Is Avalon Housing a nonprofit agency, so it will not be on the tax rolls?
So there will be a payment in lieu of taxes, which will likely be around 4% of the rents that would be paid.
Oh, okay. And that would be part of the agreement.
Correct. That actually takes an ordinance, so that's one thing we would work on in the interim between now and October, was getting that ordinance in place, because that would need to be in place before the October filing.
Okay.
So we have one that was actually set up for walkabout, so we would do one like that, but for this development.
Thank you. I see the dollar figure on page 2. The numerical number is different than the printed number.
Give the
$500.
Yeah. And that, like I said, yeah, in the memo that we calculated that as the original price plus the interest paid on the bond, so. Basically just getting our money back.
Zach, sorry for.
I'll start with the little tech. Is this intended to be a reportable document?
It will eventually be, yeah.
Okay, there's some work at the back end of it that hasn't been flushed out. It needs to have the witnessing.
Oh, yeah.
I would also encourage you to talk with council about including language towards the end that says this agreement shall not be interpreted against either party who drafted it. Because the general construction is that if we're listed as the drafter and there's some discrepancy or some interpretation that goes against you as the drafter of the document. So having that language, a good attorney can probably spit that out if you wake them up in the middle of the night. I would like to have, I know we can require it in zoning ordinance, but I prefer to have as part of this document that we will have a development agreement with this that lays out that it will be used for affordable housing in perpetuity, that if it changes, then we have an option to weigh in at that time. And I'm not sure who best to answer this, but the LIHTC, my understanding, it has to be affordable housing for 20 years, but after that it can pop up, correct?
Yeah, I know there's some year portion.
Okay, and I know Avalon doesn't intend it right now, but I know Walkabout Creek, a lot of those popped up. I would like to, or I don't know if it needs to be in here, but it probably is better that if it does pop at some time away from affordable housing, that it's clear that you're on the tax rolls. And so there's no pointing to this that says we get to do the pilot instead. That's all about it. Thank you.
That actually is addressed in the ordinance that you'll see eventually for the payment of lieu taxes, that it has to meet the affordable housing criteria to warrant the payment of lieu taxes.
Okay.
So that will be covered in the ordinance.
All set, sir?
Yep, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Mr. Cousins?
On page 147, this view is not the agreement, but it says that the property will only be used for the Avalon project, and then down below that it says for the project and for the locating of a permanent food pantry. Are those in conflict with each other? That's the wording of that, or is that?
So Avalon will own everything. They aren't allowed to like technically lease space, or so Faith and Action will be a part of the development through that memorandum of understanding that was in the packet, but they're not going to own anything on the property.
Faith and Action?
Faith and Action, right.
All right.
No, Avalon's going to build it all and own it all. They'll be basically using some of the community center space as office and.
I did not bring my diagram for the last time, and I heard that it was kind of a diagram, and it wasn't necessarily a.
Fine.
It wasn't a
That was
survey.
just a simple sketch,
Yeah.
that's all.
Simple sketch.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
all
So-
that was.
So my first question is that with that, it looked like there was some kind of infringement on the garden space there. Their site and our site. I don't know who set the garden space out, but it looked like it wasn't parallel or perpendicular to the
Yeah, the
to the
aerial.
board there, and set out a little angle, so
Yeah.
when they did theirs, and it may not be, I don't know.
Yeah, on the air, that's coming from the aerial. When you look at it, that it's on an angle like that, which is weird because you'd have no idea, and when you're on it, it doesn't feel like it.
I feel like, okay. And then my other question was, what about the well site? Is there an issue that we could redrill that well site on our property?
We're not going to own any property is the issue, because DTE will own the one side and Avalon will own the other, so.
Can we get an agreement with Avalon, or can we drill the property? Can we drill a
The
well
well,
there?
irrigation well. Possibly, I mean, we haven't discussed it,
If
but
not,
I
we're
mean,
gonna
it
have
could
to
be
make
part
an
of the
agreement with
well.
them for watering somehow.
Right.
It's a separate.
Yeah, we'll have to talk that through, I think. But it's a good.
I wrote it down.
I get it, it's a good question. It's an undetermined thing, yeah.
Right.
But it's a good question.
But wasn't it discussed that Avalon and Faith in Action, or one or the other, would be interested in running community garden for us?
I think that they were interested, I mean, they were okay with leaving some space there, and the way that it works, it looks like a lot of it will be on the easement, sort of the unbuildable space between the two, the setback area, I guess, is between the two properties,
So it's not really going in?
It shouldn't have to an extent, I can't say it's
Well,
exactly the same.
relocated. I mean, it can be relocated.
Or the raised
Revisit.
beds, you know, might be an issue, that kind of stuff, but.
Nancy?
Oh, I'd just like to make 2 quick points. One is that Avalon isn't just sort of giving us space there out of the goodness of their hearts, although they do have good hearts. But Faith in Action is really, through that memorandum of understanding, is agreeing to provide the supportive services for the residents of those buildings, many of whom will need pretty intensive support services to maintain their tenancy. But it will essentially, because we will be in that space and providing those services, and and going after to look for the resources to help provide those services, it essentially kind of creates a full-time presence for us here in the community that we've never had. So it's really much more of a partnership, and not necessarily, it doesn't make us sort of the subsidiary partner there. That's one thing. The other thing is that Avalon really noticed from the very beginning that the community garden really improves the site's scoring even on the MISHDA application, because it really indicates that there's already community activity there on the site that would really enhance and maybe make an opportunity for some of the tenants there to participate.
Yeah.
So they really see the garden as an extreme positive and will put lots of effort into its maintenance.
And there's one last thing. I've said this before, I do not think that we should dismiss the fact because we sold the 2 acres to DTE that we couldn't get some kind of an agreement with them to give us a part of that site for a community garden. I think that's a great thing for them in their PR reasoning, and it certainly doesn't have any impact on anything that they're going to do on that site right there. So I'm not giving up. I mean, we're 4 years away from that happening, I understand. We do have a agreement with them, I understand.
Or that we can stay on it, correct, until they
It
notify
doesn't
us.
prohibit us from going in there and asking them for a space that they would dedicate to us for that site.
Just repeat that so you hear it. Right now, the agreement says that we can use it until they say we can't.
Right.
But their lawyers aren't going to let them change that language until they exactly know what. So it's ours to use.
And
until
maybe
they,
that will be the impetus to have that process continue on forever.
Right.
And I guess my point was a little crooked, we straighten it out or whatever we had to do to make it.
Yeah, it's funny that you guys basically put it where there weren't a lot of trees, right? I mean, so you didn't have to do many removals.
Trees, well, they took a lot of shrubs out, those kind of junk things that were in the middle there, but that took effort. Dan and his crew took care of that, and they continue to mow and do all those things for us in that area.
DTE is certainly not going to want to come and mow it.
I wouldn't think so.
Guarantee you that, so. I'm sure they'll be happy to have us do that in perpetuity.
Zach, more thoughts?
Technical question, I'm looking at page 158. It doesn't look, at least according to Washington County GIS, that the property has been split yet. Is it still one parcel?
We're working on that right now.
Okay. So on this Appendix J, the parcel ID is going to change and probably the street address is going to change. So make sure whoever's doing that, because I know when people get the mortgage stuff, if it says RD instead of road, they all freak out because I don't know why, but.
The current address
Yes,
is
so-
with the DTE site.
Okay.
I'm not going to address the stuff that you don't even know what Avalon does.
Yeah, so and this document's just going to Washington County, not to the state, so that will help us
Okay. Other things to be discussed? So we'll see this back in 2 weeks? Okay. Thank you for your good work on that. Nancy, thanks for hanging with us for a long meeting. Business item L6, discussion of Mill Creek Park Phase 2. Would you like to introduce this or?
Well, basically, we're just looking for feedback because we did not receive the trust fund grant. So we've got to decide what we're going to do to still potentially make this project work. With it being, as planned, a $1.2 million project, that would be a very large chunk of change for the city. We have about $613,000 in grant funding. One of the things Mayor Hugh asked was, in response to the fact that the TAP grant people are pretty set that it should have, they wanted to have a transportation, leaning. And so when we said, well, what if we just take the trail to Grandview and bring it out, to them that was more recreational than transportation.
Yeah, if we kept the upper loop
Right.
from Mill Creek Park around to Grandview and then back around to the starting place, we considered that recreational focus.
So Sean asked if we could look into starting from the Baker Road access and then going up to Grandview and then running the sidewalk to town. And then you're kind of connecting the same thing, just in a different way. And it's less, just recreational and more transportation, so.
You're kind of eliminating one of the loops, but you still have the same starting and ending places, which.
In other words, doing the yellow.
The yellow.
Yeah.
Or a portion of the yellow.
Right, Steve would do part of the yellow.
We've got the commitment from the Grandview project for the long straightaway piece coming off the Grand.
Within
portion of
Grandview's property.
So it's kind of an interesting way around the problem.
So that estimate, it still has to be finally reviewed by Smith Group, but it's coming out to be about $850,000 compared to the 1.2 million original project estimate.
So what do we have a commitment from for the Grandview project, which part?
So
just the straight stretch along, segment along?
Yeah, within the Grandview property.
Of this part.
Yeah, so heading kind of in a southerly direction.
Correct. I believe it's a portion of segment 10.
Yeah, so right in here.
Oh, not all.
Where kind of the red and yellow are on top of one another.
Oh, I see.
So along the street as well?
They are not responsible for Grand Street.
They've already put in the sidewalk that's in red
So just that
along
section?
Grand.
Yeah, so that's sorry.
This is one of the competing.
Yeah, that small section.
This is one of the competing elements
from this blue line.
$4 coming out of the fund that competes with the fire station.
From that blue line there.
I mean, our reserves. Well, it's fair. I mean, it's all,
This is what for ours.
What's that, we have 190?
We put aside for it from our
Yeah, extra money from the.
local community stabilization.
Right.
So we have about 800,000 grants in
Yeah,
cash.
the original project would have been the red all the way around to the yellow, ending at Baker, right?
Correct.
And connecting here?
Yes.
So, and that's what, 1.2, that's the 1.2 number? So we have 600 in funding, right? So the question that council needs to consider is how much do you want to try and spend in addition to the grant money to make something new happen? Or
we have 300 from Washington County and 313 from TAP for 613 total grant funding.
And 850 is including, is that construction only, or is that including?
Nope, that's all in.
That's design and everything? Design, construction, engineering, construction phase services?
Yes.
Okay, that's what this is?
Yep.
Taking their estimate. Like I said, has to get lost by JGR. We need to use their quantity.
My feeling is right now, this is I just got this tonight, I really need to think this through, I really don't have any major thoughts on it right now, so I can analyze it a little bit longer, and a little bit more thorough, put down figures, figure out what somebody else is doing. You know, the answer was that, you know, you said the original one, well, actually, the original one was different than what we ended up trying to do. It was actually going to go all the way out past the school and end up on Danway Road. I mean, on Shield Road there, which is in fact where now, as you brought up the last time, Sean, Scioto Township would like to have us connect to that spot.
Yeah, I'm still trying to schedule that meeting, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
So we could make a decision at the next meeting and still have enough time to get what we need, because TAP is really the driving factor of this, because you have to get on MDOT's bid letting schedule, and we would need to have that bidding date by September, so we would need to file by February, so at least the program application. So if we can think about it and do something at the second meeting in January, that would be optimal. So if anybody has any questions or other things you want us to look at, you know, just let us know.
What, Attorney, you said TAP, what was the
So
the
page
date?
166
Yeah.
has the dates that were,
What?
the timeline.
66?
Yeah, once they're there. That's what
Oh.
we're kind of up against there. The county money, we have until 2020, I think, to spend it, but
Yeah, it might even be more than that.
I think that's what she had in those documents, but, you know, so that's not really, they don't have a strict schedule, but, MDOT certainly does.
So 2/18 is the date that we need to do that.
Yeah.
I had that start as well.
And Justin, you're gonna run this by TAP.
Yeah, so, that joint path.
I'd be interested in bending their ear for potential fundraising to do the whole thing. Because I have to imagine if you have it mobilized, it's easier to do more of it than less of it at a per linear foot cost. Is it possible to split the project into multiple fiscal years so it doesn't hurt us quite as much in the same year? Or is that getting tricky?
With that, I mean, you could always just like loan from, you know, you would just kind of be paying yourself back. So like, we would have the general fund cash to do it. You would just then put it back in the next fiscal year.
Okay. And the last comment, section 11 there, my initial feeling is it feels a bit odd to have that type of pathway in downtown like that, across from businesses and that type of stuff. Well, I'm not sure, I'll have to go out there and look at. In my mind's eye, I still feel that's where we should have sidewalks, not 10-foot wide asphalt paths. I guess my engineering question, don't have to end it now, was how does having a 10-foot wide path with 2-foot gravel shoulders on both sides fit within the right-of-way? Because I know we did work with OHM to have a parking improvement plan there. And although we got ridiculous wide right-of-ways, 14 feet eats a big chunk out of that pretty quickly. So before we commit to this guy,
We looked at with because we have that conceptual plan for Grand, and that had the 10-foot wide sidewalk, so it didn't look like adding 4 more feet. It looked pretty wide off the road.
And then that was with the on-street parking.
Parallel.
I think it was perpendicular.
Yeah.
we should look at that plan, we need to pull that up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it would hurt to have sidewalk there though.
No,
I
that's
agree
not
with
what the
that.
general, it's just that we need TAP, we have to make it super wide.
Yeah, any project funded by TAP has to have the total of 14
Sure.
feet. And in the case of asphalt, it can be 10 feet with 2-foot wide gravel shoulders. But that's a TAP requirement.
That has to be,
If we're gonna use
With all the,
TAP funding for it.
it can just be from Grand to Baker that way?
For
14 feet or 10 feet wide?
Our point in trying to sell it to the TAP people was that it was still gonna connect them downtown.
Oh, but
So
if you,
to do that, we would need to run it from Grand to Broad.
I mean, but it could connect the sidewalk in front of Grand too. Same
Yeah, but they
argument.
can't really because it's only, because that's not, it's only 10 feet. I mean, we're trying to get the money to the sidewalk there since we don't have it there now. And to show that it was connecting to the same place as it was connecting before. We're trying to get it connect back here so we can say it's still starting and ending at the same spot, it's just getting there different.
No, I get it. I don't, I'm trying to figure out if there's another way to do the same thing, or similar thing. But I'm not, because I'm with Zach's question, I'd like to see the 10-foot path and how it fits on Grand. Not sure I understand that very well.
Well, I mean,
That's in front of the cemetery?
From Boardwalk, it would run in front of the cemetery, and it would connect with the sidewalk in front of Grandview, but the primary path itself would turn and run along.
I'm curious how it fits with the parking you're talking about.
Yeah.
It looked from the conceptual drawing we have that it would fit.
It fits in real well with all that,
With the
those
sidewalk.
apartments on the opposite side there and the new ones that are proposed there. We can have a big cross and flashing beacon right there.
There you go.
Since everybody that's going to use that is going to have to walk across the street anyway.
There's some parking there, because Forest Lawn.
Yeah, no, there's definitely,
utilizes parking.
yeah, it didn't. I mean, in that conceptual plan, that the parking more is fine. You know, we just obviously haven't done that. Yeah, it's not a priority.
So council, really the main thing we have to think about is how much extra cash we're going to put out towards this. And that's the assignment to use.
And there's 200,000 already just sitting there for this.
So the tap one is real, go back. That's the real problem, that we have to spend, use it now, we can't save it later on. It's gone,
Correct.
never reapply,
You can, it's just you go back into the scoring and,
process.
right.
Do we score high on it?
I don't know if we actually ever saw a physical score.
Yeah, I
thought we were
don't know if we
funded.
saw the score comparison.
Yeah.
So I guess I was leading up to my question, is there any fault, reason not to, just to delay it a year and reapply to the state again for the original fund that we did get through Indiana?
We can, if we can come to a decision on the Iron Bell case, that might improve our scoring for trust fund, but it also might not.
Well, we obviously gotta look to make it aside, wouldn't it, John? It should, that could be done, that should improve that as well.
It could, I don't know.
I would have thought a project that they brought the trust fund forward to visit that they paid for would have been good enough to, you know, connect it to something that they funded was gonna be good enough to.
And I'm not sure, but I think we put that down there when we applied for the first one, that we were planning this connection. It wasn't the,
And then they were very aware of that this is a phased approach, and that phase one was complete with their funding assistance, and that this is part of a bigger plan. Where we hurt a little bit in the scoring is
we're too rich, this thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we've received the funding, I mean, it does for you who have received it. When we first applied 5 years, 6 years ago, we had never received any, so that's like.
Right. And then they go back, it's 20 years. So if you receive funding in the last 20 years, then it counts against your score.
So just so I'm clear, we have 630,000 grants. And are either of those grants earmarked for specific segments or reserved for specific segments?
It was, the project that we billed to them was the one that's in packet.
Okay.
So when we talked to Kat about, okay, what would you let us do to try to minimize product cost? That was where we got into the conversation of, they really wanted to be transportation,
Right.
not necessarily recreation, so. But what they approved was what was the fact. And we had asked for more money, more funds than they actually gave us. They reduced the award pretty significantly from what we had asked for.
Based on what was eligible, what was an eligible expense.
So what will we see at the next meeting, Cory?
I need more information that we gathered, updates from what's happened, the county said about this potential idea, the bus cost estimate from BJR.
That's
So Grand Street, Miranda,
a TAP resolution.
The draft one?
It will be a draft, I think, if council chooses to adopt it.
And we have this meeting and the next one, right? This.
Correct, yeah.
With the last meeting, the first meeting in February to do it?
Yes, the first meeting in February should be long.
Yeah, that would only give 1 week to get the program application in. Right? That's the.
We do have the program application started,
Okay.
but there are noticeable blanks that we
Yeah.
can't fill in yet.
Okay, well, if anybody thinks of anything additional that needs to be provided in the next, whatever, 10 days, let's get the variance back and please get it according to this. Is it okay to move on to L-Town? Big values.
Yeah, we don't really have to talk about this, I guess.
Yeah, well, we've been at this since 6, right?
Yeah.
Most have been at work a while, too. Business item L7, discussion of waste management contract renewal.
Yeah, I mean, we can just talk about this at the next meeting. We're gonna do, I decided, we're gonna do a newsletter article about the toter concept, because no matter what we do, it's likely to be a toter of some form, even if we do bid it out, so, but we will need to decide if we want to renew with waste management or to bid it out sometime soon, because the bid process for something like this is pretty, I don't know, it's a lot of work. So, especially with the commercial, it would be pretty simple if it was residential, but commercial adds a layer of fun, because there's so many different types of dumpsters and service.
And you're saying that if we stay with waste management, it'd be easier.
Right, certainly easier, yeah, that's no doubt, but not necessarily the reason to take the choice, obviously. It would definitely be easier. But since it's likely to go toter, I think it's good to just start prepping the residents that it's going in that
Every
direction.
100%, I think we're going to have some resistance from people.
Yeah, even if we bid it,
Elderly
no
people,
one,
single people.
yeah, people aren't gonna bid, people just aren't gonna bid the hand-picked up stuff anymore.
You what?
Trash companies aren't gonna put in bids on
Right.
hand-picked up stuff anymore, it's just not.
And our,
A coder has wheels?
Mhm.
Okay, so
Can't have
single
one-
people can still pull on this.
They're very cumbersome, though. My
They're
my daughter has
massive.
those
Yeah, they're pretty
They're
big. That's why I was
bad.
thinking having a 64-gallon option for some residents would be, I think, something we definitely want to include, because those are more, more man, 96 is big. I mean, we have one in the office where our recycling, I mean, that's an example of what it is, and that's, you can put a person in there. So,
So, I mean, I will probably want two. I want one for garbage, one for recycling. Can you get one for, smaller one for garbage and not have a recycling one?
well, I mean, I
Or you're gonna get
guess,
two, you're gonna get two no matter what.
I think everyone's gonna get two no matter what. Now, I don't know if, like you say, if you're like Ray and you're never gonna use it, if they'll take it back, I don't know. We didn't get to that level of detail. I know he said that in some of the communities, they've done a thing with like a postcard where if you want the 64 gallon instead of 96, you send that back and they swap it out. But that was still having two.
So everybody's gonna have two,
Correct.
no matter what.
Somebody better call Ray.
Yeah,
Give a little heads up.
good point. But I think that my personal opinion what's gonna happen is that people are just gonna dump it all into the big one, and they get a big one of those, dump everything in that. Forget it. I mean, okay, I didn't take it out today, okay? Because I want to fill it up and take it out. So we'll just dump all the recycles into the big one, get rid of it that way, and recycling will not be as easy or as efficient as it should be.
Well, the theory generally, though, the communities have found is that when you give someone a larger recycle container, they fill it. So but yeah, I mean, I suppose some people could go that way too, but I think generally what they've seen is that if you give someone a larger container, they will fill
Was
it.
that less breaking down and all that?
That's true, right, with cardboard and stuff, you can fit more in it, so. But yeah, I mean, it is, I don't think that people will be shocked. I mean, I think the people that know other people that live other places, that's what you're seeing. More and more, so.
It's gonna be changed.
Zach? I would be interested in bidding this out. I'm not necessarily saying that Waste Management hasn't been decent service, but just every couple of years you gotta check your car insurance and your house insurance and see that you're still doing good. Personally, I think these totes are quite vulgar. Yes. Yes. We usually have 13-gallon bag of trash a week. I have no idea where I'm going to be able to compete and put this on my property that's not going to be jumping out at you from the sidewalk all week long. But that's the way it's going. I'd like to see the option for people to get the bigger the small, but I also don't like that if you need two, they're going to make you pay for that on your own. Now if you get the large TV, you can set it next to the thing and we'll throw it in.
Well, that will still be true, though, but it'll be once a month. With large items.
And
It's
you
more
have-
like if you consistently have, for some reason, more than 96 gallon, which
Yeah,
should be a lot.
but then if you buy the 60-inch TV from Costco, you have to either time which week it's coming in, or you have to wait
Right, or
until
call
it's
for a
sitting
special
out.
pickup.
I don't take time to write it out, they took it today. It wasn't the TV.
Your
it was-
60-inch TV.
It was a tool kit that my son grabbed, and it came in 2 boxes.
Yeah, no, now
One
they
inside
do.
the other one, and it was gigantic, I couldn't believe what it was. It was as big as this, my arm at the end of the table, and the thing was as big inside of it, that end was out of the center.
Yeah, now they
I
take,
stood it out and laid it out there, praying that they'd take it.
yeah, now they take stuff weekly, so.
I would also be interesting to see, my understanding is that they take the recycling to their own facility, right?
I forget where they're currently taking it, but yeah,
It would-
they take it.
It'd be interesting to see if they could take it instead to Western Washtenaw Recycling Authority instead, because then there wouldn't be a cost to us. My understanding is that WWRA is still able to turn profit on the materials they get.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where they've been taking it within our version of the post. I'd have to ask, it's been a while since I've asked for it.
And I'm good with that. Thank you.
All right, so we'll see this one again next month, or next week, or next back of the week.
Yeah,
We'll try to get some, ready. Okay, if we move down to some comments. Zach, if you're ready, I'll start with you, please.
Just a humorous bit. I have apparently demonstrated enough skill with Zamboni operation that I am going to be doing the varsity Dexter game tomorrow. So if you hear of anyone getting run over by a Zamboni, I'm probably looking for a new job after that.
And who is playing, do we know?
I don't know. You just tell me when to cut the ice. I'm good.
Ms. Knight?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Smith? Ms. Jones?
The one thing I have is the advantage of the big container, at least you put a stuff in other than Chelsea, you get this little orange bag that you stuff out there and set out, which you have, you buy your orange bag, that's how you pay for your, so. That's ridiculous.
What company is that? Let's not do that.
If they do, the city does it over there. But I think it looks ugly, see all these orange bags around town.
I think Big Green Buckets are gonna be pretty ugly too.
Well, the kids had one out in Phoenix, and it was, this, you know, they were there early in the morning and put it back in, and it was, no, yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher? Mr. Bell?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Nothing.
Okay, so we're back around on non-arranged participation. Is there anybody left that would like to speak on a non-arranged?
I'll go home.
So we are down to item O, which is a closed session. We still want to do it?
Yep. Still on the agenda.
But I need somebody to make a motion to go in, please. I need a second it.
I'll move.
Gonna move, we go in accordance with? Okay.
Support.
Second by Cousins, okay, thank you. So we are entering closed session. Please clear the room.
Bell?
Yes.
Fisher? Yes. Michelle?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Keel?
No. 10:20, yeah. We are here.